around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
A very busy show tonight. My Mark Meets guest is actor turned politician Lawrence Fox. In The Big Question, just what is Vladimir Putin up to? And how close are we to war with Russia? We'll speak to 3 top experts on that one. Plus my big opinion monologue and my all-star panel reacting to the big stories of the day, plus another great British game show. And surprising revelations after 10 about my newsreader, Polly Middlehurst, who's here with the headlines.
You're with Polly Middlehurst in the GB newsroom. The top stories this hour. Downing Street says an MP who claims she was sacked because of her Muslimness was invited to make a formal complaint but failed to do so. Nusrat Ghani lost her job as Transport Minister in 2020. The Prime Minister spoke to her after learning of the extremely serious allegation. In a statement, the MP says Boris Johnson did write to her, but he said he couldn't get involved and that only she wanted the government to take the matter seriously and investigate it properly. Here's what the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, had to say.
I believe actions, a claim like this, as serious as this, should, but it can only happen if the person making the complaint makes a formal makes it formally. That's when the procedures kick in. And just to be clear about this, that advice was given to Nuz back in 2020.
Dominic Raab. In international news, Britain has accused the Russian President Vladimir Putin of plotting to install a pro-Moscow leader as head of the government in Ukraine. In an unusual move, the Foreign Office named the former Ukrainian MP Yevhen Murayev as a potential pro-Kremlin candidate to take over in Kiev. Former head of the army, Lord Richard Dannett, told GB News the West needs to work out what Putin's objective is.
We have to remember that scrape him to the core and you find an unreconstructed KGB colonel whose beloved Warsaw Pact and Soviet Union was destroyed by the cohesion of the West in 1989 when the Berlin Wall came down. And what he would like to achieve more than anything else is to sow discord and doubt amongst the minds of NATO members and break up that cohesion of NATO.
Lord Dannett. A suspect accused of killing a British man with a sickle is being questioned by police in Thailand. 49-year-old Marcus Evans was found dead in his home with knife wounds. Another British man who's 55 was injured while trying to stop the suspect. Police say an initial investigation found they were attacked for playing music too loudly in the early hours of Saturday morning. Here, the former Housing Secretary is calling for the national insurance hike, which he approved, to be postponed. Robert Jenrick says the government's responding to the cost of living crisis is lamentably slow. He added that confronting harsh realities is part of alleviating the situation for low and middle income families. On TV, online and on your radio through DAB+. You're with GB News. Now back to Mark Dolan.
It is Sunday, January the 23rd. This is Mark Dolan tonight. In a jam-packed 3 hours, my Mark Meets guest is a man who's never out of the headlines. Actor turned politician Laurence Fox joins me in the studio. My Mark Meets guest isn't going to be here till 10, but lots more before that, because in the big question, just what is Vladimir Putin playing at? And how close are we to war with Russia? I'll speak to 3 top experts. My all-star panel reacting to the big stories of the day are political commentator Emily Carver, author Peter Lloyd, and comedian Sajila Kershi. Plus, big stories and big laughs in headliners after 11 in the company of 2 top comics with your first look at tomorrow's papers. And I want to hear from you throughout the show. Mark at gbnews.uk. It's a busy Sunday night. Remember, we don't do boring, not on my watch. So get the kettle on, milk, no sugar please, and let's get to work. Earlier today, this headline courtesy of the Mail Online caught my eye. Inspectors at HMP Downview in South London said that a large proportion of the 210 female inmates were overweight, with many gaining weight during lockdown. Women are locked in their single cells, of course, for around 22 hours a day, with just 30 minutes allowed for outdoor exercise, with many ending up feasting on snacks in their cells. Very often when anyone tries to change their life, there is a moment, isn't there? A trigger point. How many people go on a diet when a favourite pair of jeans suddenly don't fit? Or when they see their holiday snaps? Wow, am I really that fat? Perhaps the story of female prisoners breaking loo seats because they're so fat could be one such moment for all of us. A small story that sums up a wider health problem. And it's a problem that proves we've got a problem in this country. Broken loo seats are the bellwether, a metaphor for a broken health system. We spent 2 years fretting over a potentially nasty but largely mild virus, whilst ignoring the elephant in the room, obesity. We are fat. We're a nation of porkers, lard asses, chubby cheeks. We are heavy-boned. We're double-chinned. We're a nation of fat-bottomed girls and fat-bottomed boys. And our collectively high body mass index has exposed us to the worst of this virus. COVID is a predominantly lifestyle-related illness, with the overweight by some distance the most likely to suffer severe illness or sad death. COVID, and of course we all hate it, is effectively a brutal diagnostic tool for poor metabolic health. Don't give me that guff about healthy people getting COVID and going into intensive care. If COVID sends you to hospital, you were not healthy in the first place. Now, there's no fat shaming here. In 2018, I was getting a beer belly. I was rocking the dad bod. I got rid of processed carbohydrates, bread, pasta, potatoes, the aforementioned beer and sugar, and lost 3 stone. Wretched as it has been, the pandemic should have been an opportunity to address the disastrous state of public health in this country, which is getting worse, not better, with childhood obesity, our latest headache. COVID should have taught us something. Lessons should have been learned. And policies should have changed. Well, no such luck. Lockdowns have made the problem even worse. And over the last 2 years, we've seen so-called health measures that include closing gyms and public parks whilst keeping open fast food restaurants. Wow, follow the science. 2 years on and still not a squeak about public health or exercise. The answer apparently is neither of those things. It's covering your face with a filthy rag and vaccinating yourself every 10 minutes. Now, whilst I welcome the arrival of the vaccine, especially for those most vulnerable, good public health is the ultimate vaccine. No obesity, no pandemic. Now, I'm a liberal, and so if you want to eat yourself into an early grave, knock yourself out. There are lots of things that are, on paper, unhealthy. Some people take drugs, some people drink too much, some people ride motorcycles, some people go skiing off-piste. Life is dangerous, it turns out. And you've got a sacred right to decide what happens with your body. Bodily sovereignty is the last frontier of human freedom. When that goes, it's over. So it's your decision what goes into your arm and into your gob, for that matter. But, and here's the important point, the idea of body positivity is an issue, an attempt to normalise what is essentially ill health. If you are a size 20, 22 or beyond, there's no judgment here, but don't tell me that you're well, that you're healthy. Now, fat shaming is the most evil thing, up there with any other nasty prejudice. And I see anyone that's overweight as a victim of the toxic food environment in which we live. But to have a high body mass index opens the door to type 2 diabetes, cancer, dementia, and susceptibility to infections like COVID. The NHS, for all its excellent work, in particular its emergency services, and of course in coping with the hellish demands of the pandemic, is failing when it comes to wider public health. You go to the doctor and the solution is always a pill. The NHS is a medication dispensing service. Your doctor is a drug dealer. Prevention of illness and better public health are an afterthought. But managing preventable lifestyle conditions like type 2 diabetes is costing billions, upwards of 10% of the NHS budget and growing. In the end, lifestyle-related illness will bankrupt health systems, not just here, but around the world. It is not sustainable. The food industry makes billions marketing and selling us horrific junk. I wouldn't even use the word food. It's a food-like substance, carefully engineered to be tasty and addictive. And the pharmaceutical industry profits at the back end when our health fails as a result. Big food and big pharma have a symbiotic relationship, and they literally feed off each other. And the cost of obesity to the NHS goes beyond the direct cost of chronic conditions like type 2 diabetes. It goes far beyond that, because the issue you have is that young people now need knee replacements, and they've got heart problems, and they've got lung issues, and so much more. So here is the simple message, folks. We've got to get healthy. Here's an example of someone that did get healthy very recently, and it's the former Labour deputy leader, Tom Watson. Now, this is a guy who actually followed a similar protocol to my own. He gave up processed carbohydrates. He lost 8 stone. I think we've got an after show photo. Look at that. What a handsome devil. An amazing achievement. 8 stone. This guy lost a whole nother human being. What an achievement. So here's the point, folks. Anything is possible, but it's a conversation we've absolutely got to have. And it's a conversation we'll certainly have on this show here at GB News. Brilliant stuff. Well, what do you think? Mark at GB News is my email. I'm delighted to have my all-star panel with me in the studio tonight. Emily Carver, Peter Lloyd and Sajila Kershi. Folks, welcome to the programme. Sajila, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight for the first time. We've nicked you off headliners. What do you think about this issue of COVID and obesity?
Well, I just want to say I'm actually a size 0 and the camera just puts on a few pounds. So I'm looking like a size 18, which is actually what I am. So when you had the 22, size 22 flashing up there, it was reminding me of Logan's Run, my hands flashing. Like, oh my God, if I get beyond 18, I'm going to be dead. What do I make of it? Of course, in prisons, you know, they're not getting a good diet anyway, and they're not getting the exercise they need. So, of course, that was going to happen. Has the pandemic has the pandemic sort of made it difficult for people to exercise? Of course it did. You know, we only allowed an hour a day, and you know, and half of that time was avoiding other people that were also only having an hour a day and not exercising out there. But yeah, I mean, it's not all blamed on fat people, though. I think there was a bit of fat shaming there going, now, naughty, naughty. I think that it isn't a pandemic. It's a bit of a propaganda there. It isn't the pandemic. It affected everybody. And having spoken to doctors myself, which I know you probably have as well, Mark, of course, you've got, you've had healthy, young, fit men who there's no rhyme or reason. It's a lottery when it comes to...
Wait a minute. Sajila, I can't think of too many healthy, young, fit men who were in ICU during the course of the pandemic. They would be statistically insignificant. I mean, the bottom line is, this is not fat shaming. I was overweight. My doctor said, look, your blood sugars are quite high, and if you carry on like this, you'll have type 2 diabetes. That's a conversation I had with my doctor in 2018. And this is just about us getting well as a nation. If we were in better public health, COVID would have been less of a threat.
Are you still addressing me? Or
yeah, I mean, I just think that, you know, it's important to separate fat shaming from an honest conversation about if you're overweight, that opens the door to a lot of illness.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, I'm not saying that being overweight doesn't make you unhealthy. Of course it does. You know, it leads to other sort of health issues. But you mentioned diabetes, and diabetes can actually be a genetic thing within the South Asian community. It is a genetic disorder. To suggest that COVID is only happening, or COVID is only out there attacking people who have like obesity problems or are overweight, I think that's incorrect, because it's a world pandemic and it was a lottery who got it, who didn't get it. However, if you're recovering from that surgery or from any kind of if you had COVID, then it could make it more problematic. But let's not blame all of the size zeros on screen, shall we?
Well, too right. I mean, look, I think that's a fair counterbalance to the argument. Emily, what are your thoughts on this? The link between obesity and susceptibility to COVID, and the issue about whether if you're fat, you're healthy or not healthy?
Firstly, I cannot imagine, Mark Dolan, yourself being overweight. You're so tall and slim. I can't imagine it. I must have, not known you at that point in your life, but it's good that you've lost the weight. I think it's clear, we knew this pretty early on in the pandemic, that being overweight, being obese, meant you were at more risk, that you were more likely, if you contracted the virus, to end up, sadly, in hospital and in ICU. I think what's particularly interesting also about this story is, of course, these things have been made worse by lockdown, by COVID measures, which is a combination of, well, either being locked in your house and not being able to exercise, but the stress and the anxiety making those who have a propensity towards overeating do so more. But also, at the same time, we've got on the other end of the spectrum so many more people suffering from eating disorders. So people have been crippled in that way too, and that's something that we are yet to know the full impact of. I know that a lot of young girls especially really suffered with that over the period, and it's lockdown made these matters so much worse, and we're yet to see the data on this. But I think early indicators is showing that global obesity around the world has gone up.
Yes. Now, Peter, I strongly believe that what we need as a population is information, not instruction. I think we need to be advised by the NHS and the medical establishment the best course of action to lose weight and be healthy. But then it's up to us to actually do that. But it is a conversation we've got to have.
Right, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, and there is already a wealth of information out there about obesity, and specifically obesity and the links with COVID. Going back to the story about the prisons, I mean, I was reading it and I was thinking to myself, well, when I imagine prisons, when I think about prisons, if I've watched Midnight Express or Broke Down Palace or something like that, the words that spring to mind about prison are usually reform, rehabilitation and punishment. The word that doesn't spring to mind is comfort. And apparently this is what these female inmates were doing when they were getting fat. They were comfort eating. And that makes me question, hang on a second, why are inmates in prisons being allowed to comfort eat or have much comfort at all when they're supposedly being punished for a crime that they've committed, when they've broken the law?
I think that's a really fair point, Sajila. That is surprising, isn't it, that inmates have got access to seemingly limitless amounts of unhealthy food?
I don't know what they eat because I've not had prison food, but
Never say never.
I'm assuming it's probably not home-cooked food. It's maybe processed nuggets and stuff. I don't know. I'm just imagining that because it's probably on par with school dinners. Some of the school dinners are horrific. But what they're not getting is ample exercise. And, absolutely agree that like this past year or the past 2 years, exercise or any kind of, I know we had who's the guy that did all the exercise at the beginning, first lockdown that everybody was jumping around to?
Joe Wicks.
Joe Wicks. Yeah, he needs a knighthood. Why hasn't he got one? But, I mean, the thing is, the lockdown, you had everything to kind of gear towards putting on weight. Everyone was cooking at home, making sourdough. What is it, sourdough bread, or was it the other bread, the other one?
Banana bread.
Banana bread, curries, and then displaying it on Instagram. I mean, that's kind of what we lived for, was to cook. I cooked a lot, and I like cooking for friends. Deliveroo was doing really well, and all those Uber kind of eat places, delivery food, because that, again, people finding comfort in getting menu stuff in, whereas I was just recreating, Nando's, there are other brands available, at home by myself. So I can see how the nation would have, what we don't want to get is we don't want to get like America, where you're so morbidly obese that you're going to, you're kind of physically removed from your house. Those
documentaries, though, are compelling.
Yeah,
the ones where there's 60-ton tests or something.
But
as a nation, we are becoming like America. Yeah. America has always led in the trends that Britain has followed, and when it comes to obesity, we are absolutely following suit. And this is why, Mark, it goes back to your point earlier, is that the information is already out there. What we need now is self-control. We need people to regulate what they eat. It's not the government's job. It's not the job of prison wardens to dictate what we eat. We are responsible for ourselves in terms of what we consume. And ultimately, it's our responsibility.
I think when it comes to prison wardens, I have to disagree, Peter, because prison wardens, they're supplying the menu. Why not put other more interesting things on the menu? I don't know, we can have Friday fiesta. We can have Mexican. Why is it? I don't, because this is it. We need to get somebody. If someone's out there, they know the menus of prisons. We need to know what they're eating, because we're actually judging without knowing what exactly they're eating.
I just worry that, considering all the how strong the public health lobby is in this country, that we'll have calls for more and more government intervention in our lives to try and make us slimmer, and it simply doesn't work. They're trying to ban adverts on junk food after 9 or before 9 o'clock, and banning adverts on the tube, and putting more taxes on sugar and all sorts, trying to eliminate sweets in the eye line when you're in a supermarket and that sort of thing. And none of this seems to have any impact. And I quite like this conversation because it seems like we all acknowledge that it's a cultural problem, it's a societal problem, more than necessarily a lack of government direction. I mean, Boris Johnson clearly tried to get us all up and moving when he, came out of hospital, and he said, I need to reform myself and get slimmer. But I think people need to be happy and they need to be active. And hopefully, as people's moods change coming out of this pandemic, they'll naturally shift some pounds.
Well, Emily, the renowned cardiologist, Dr. Aseem Malhotra, has said that exercise is great for human health, but as a form of weight loss, it's a red herring. He says you can't outrun a bad diet. So what do we do about the nation's menu if we're not going to tax unhealthy food?
Well, we let us have people. We need people to come round and cook out heavy, delicious, nutritious, slimming
We've all
meals.
got to have a personal chef like Oprah Winfrey.
A personal chef.
I'm not sure
why we can't have that.
I'm not sure there's all that much the government can do. They can advise, they can put out public health campaigns about watching our weight. But I think people know what is good and what's bad for them. I think it's about cultural change, families, parents taking responsibility for the food that's on their children's plates. I think there's a case to be made for schools to have very balanced meals at lunchtime, but I'm not sure the state can really do that much. I mean, taxing and banning doesn't seem to have much of an impact.
And what we don't actually talk about is the poverty side of, the dietary sort of requirements and where the obesity comes from. America is obese because there is poverty. It's easier, cheaper to buy junk food than it is to buy fresh ingredients. Well, I think we just need to be educated on how to make decent, cheap meals from fresh food.
But there are so many budget supermarkets now that offer good quality items, including fruit and veg, for really competitive prices. I'm just not convinced that that argument has much weight, especially not over here. Maybe in the States, maybe in places like New York and LA, I think it probably does. But here in London or in the UK, where there is no shortage of budget supermarkets, I just don't buy it.
Well, it's because those supermarkets, they've got those middle aisles that we get distracted by.
It's a really good point. Next time you go to the supermarket, buy a fishing rod, not a chicken McNuggets. Fascinating conversation. I think you'll agree we're travelling business class with my panel tonight. Emily Carver, Peter Lloyd and Sajila Kershi return very shortly. But later in the hour, we're going to have a look at some of the more bonkers COVID measures we've seen over the last 2 years. Take a look at this. A boat with a Perspex screen protecting people. Hashtag it's for your health. We'll speak to the person that took that photograph later in the hour. Also, let me tell you, I've been tweeting about it. That's right, it went viral. I shared the image and it was a major talking point. So we'll sink our teeth into that one later in the hour. And also, in the big question, just what is Vladimir Putin playing at? We'll catch up with 3 experts shortly. And after 10 o'clock, one of the most talked about men in the country. You can love him, you can hate him, but you can't ignore him. Lawrence Fox is live in the studio. First up, the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking to get off to a largely dry but predominantly cloudy start with some rain affecting northern Scotland. Let's look at the detail then. The southwest of England will be shrouded in a blanket of low cloud, which will leave at least some temperatures dipping too low, so frost will be localised. A similar story as we move across to the southeast as well, where low cloud will give some mist over hilltops. 1 or 2 cloud breaks are possible across Wales, but on the whole here too, it will be quite a gloomy start to the day. Across the northwest of England, some mist or fog is possible on high ground, and the cloud here also being thick enough to give the odd spot of drizzle in places. The northeast of England standing a better chance of catching 1 or 2 clear intervals, but where the cloud is broken, we're likely to see a slight frost begin the day. Rain affecting the north and the west of Scotland, but by contrast, a dry start on the cards across southern and eastern areas, again with a touch of frost likely. Areas near the north coast of Northern Ireland will have cloud breaks, but for the rest of the province, Monday looks set to be a dry day, although rather grey. And though the remainder of Monday morning, some rain will persist in the far northwest, elsewhere it will stay mainly dry, with largely cloudy skies. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
So many emails coming in off the back of our conversation around obesity. And this is from Kim, who says, "Dear Mark, the government continues to champion low-fat, high-carbohydrate diets because they face pressure from the food companies and big pharma. Sugar is poison and is in all processed foods. And as you say, we live in a toxic world of food. Hardly anyone eats real food." How about bringing back home economics, teaching children properly how to cook real food at school? There's an idea. How about this from Jim? "Dear Mark, surely prisons have a duty of care over the convicts. This must include diet, since they have complete control over what food is provided. Also, they're missing an opportunity to train those convicts that are interested in good cooking, leading to potential employment at the end of the sentence." Well, I think that's a great idea, Jim. If you've ever seen the movie Goodfellas, there's a great scene in which several Italian gangsters are in jail cooking the most amazing penne arrabbiata. Only the Italians would make great food in prison. But it's a great point and well made. And how about this from Lorna? "Hi, Mark. One of the most dangerous things for anyone's health is sugar. It's addictive and the root of many illnesses today. There are hidden sugars in many processed foods as well. Cut it out. Health will blossom." Well, there's a picture emerging here in terms of your views on obesity. My goodness, it goes on. Maria says, "Hi, Mark. Brilliant that you're having the conversation about weight responsibility, the connection of junk food and big pharma. I've thought this for years. Great to hear it being discussed honestly and non-judgmentally. If you've struggled with your weight, let me know. Talk to me about it. mark@gbnews.uk. So lots to get through in the next 2.5 hours, including my Mark Meets guest, Lawrence Fox, live in the studio at 10. But it's time now for the big question, in which we tackle a major news story of the day from a variety of viewpoints. Tonight, just what is Vladimir Putin playing at, and how close might we be to all-out war? The United Kingdom has accused President Putin of plotting to install a pro-Moscow figure to lead Ukraine's government. The Foreign Office took the unusual step of naming former Ukrainian MP Yevhen Murayev as a potential Kremlin candidate. Russia has moved 100,000 troops near to its border with Ukraine, but denies it's planning an invasion. UK ministers have warned that the Russian government will face serious consequences if there's an incursion. In a statement, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said the information being released today shines a light on the extent of Russian activity designed to subvert Ukraine and is an insight into Kremlin thinking. Russia must de-escalate, end its campaigns of aggression and disinformation, and pursue a path of diplomacy. Yeah, good luck with that one, Foreign Secretary. Well, to debate this, I'm delighted to welcome a veritable brains trust in relation to international affairs. Professor Taras Kuzio is from the international affairs think tank, the Henry Jackson Society, and Robert Fox is the Evening Standard's defence editor. Gentlemen, welcome to the programme. Robert, if I could start with you, what is Vladimir Putin playing at?
I wish I knew. And it is the question now. It's very interesting that is this the fulfillment of the dream of how he will see his Russia emerge reconstituted? We know he's an admirer of Stalin. He's an admirer of Peter the Great, too, which might not be totally irrelevant to what we're going to say now. And as he wrote in an essay in July, he sees Ukraine as part of the Russian soul. So how is he going to go about this dream world? When we think in Western terms, when we hear people like Blinken or even Biden or Liz Truss talk about it, turn it upside down, positive to negative, and try and get into Putin's thinking. This is the thing that's just come through today or overnight from Alexander Navalny, who's in prison, But he's got an essay or some thoughts out to Time magazine, and he says that Putin is working to a fantasy world, and cracking that fantasy before it blows up and becomes a hot war is really the question of the moment, and certainly the big question this week.
Well, Robert, does he have strategic ambitions within Ukraine? Is he trying to take back Ukraine and ultimately reassemble the USSR?
He's trying to reassemble exactly that. His version of the USSR, it gets a bit Harry Potter at a certain point. You get Russian orthodoxy, you get the great Tsars, as I mentioned, Peter the Great, and the great imperial Russia. And there is this kind of rather crazy schoolboy history conspectus. So we've seen that he's trying to build the new great Russian entity. This is why we saw the adventure into Kazakhstan. Not that it was that successful, and I think there's trouble there. The problem is that with this fantasy, in carrying it out, he's got too many moving parts. There are too many things going on. We're focusing on Ukraine at the moment, but there's potential trouble in the Baltic, with the Baltic states, in the Balkans, in Syria, in Azerbaijan, remember that?
Yes.
And further south. And I think that that is going to be the real thing, because the credit, quite rightly, that is given to Putin is he's superb at tactics. The next two moves on the chessboard, he's not a fantastically good strategist, thinking, where are we going to be 5, 10, 20 years down the line? Because whatever he began against Ukraine in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea and then supporting separatists in the Donbass, in Luhansk and Donetsk, it really hasn't gone all that well, actually.
Professor Kuzio, welcome to the programme. Is this a game of chicken with the West?
To some degree, but these are long-standing demands since the 1990s that the West, in particular the US, sign a kind of a new Yalta agreement like was signed in 1945, where the US and Russia, then the USSR, divide up the world, or divide up Europe and Eurasia into spheres of influence. Russia's, even under Boris Yeltsin, always demanded that the former USSR be its exclusive sphere of influence, where not only NATO and the EU can't operate, but even the United Nations as peacekeepers can't operate. And within that Eurasian sphere of influence, the core of that is what Putin calls the Russian world. Now, he's gone back to a pre-Soviet Russian nationalism, which denies the existence of Ukraine and Belarus as separate countries. Ukrainians, Belarusians, and Russians are supposedly branches of a pan-Russian nation. So we have, in effect, pan-Russianism as we had pan-Germanism in the 1930s. There's a denial there, a refusal. And the reason Ukraine is he's so obsessed, and I don't use that word lightly with Ukraine, is because it all began for the Eastern Slavs in Kiev, in Ukraine. In fact, Ukrainians are the elder brothers, not the Russians. Moscow was founded 6 centuries after Kiev. So Putin has his obsession. He's the gatherer of Russian lands like the old Tsars were. And he's done Crimea, he's trying to do Eastern Ukraine, he's now forging a union with Belarus. Ukraine is the big apple, the big one, the jewel in the crown. The problem is, as previous commentators said, is that all of Putin's actions since 2014 have pushed Ukraine away. They've done the exact opposite to what Putin's intended. Ukraine in 2014 was not an anti-Russian country. Today it is. Today, 3/4 of Ukrainians detest Putin. 3/4 of Ukrainians think Russia is out to destroy Ukraine. 3/4 of Ukrainians think that Russia and Ukraine are at war. I mean, this is not something that was there before. Before 2014, only 20% of Ukrainians supported NATO membership. Today, it's 70%. The same with EU membership. So thank you, Vladimir Putin. The joke in Ukraine is we should put a statue up to you for actually helping us nation build, as it were. Now, what the problem that Putin has is, what are his options? What he should have done in 2014 when Ukraine was weaker, he should have gone in further. Then there was less likelihood that Ukraine could have countered it. Today, Ukraine has the third largest army in Europe. Yes, it's not as big as Russian, but this is not a cakewalk. This is not Georgia or Moldova. You are talking about 260,000 troops, 1 million reservists, of whom 400,000 are battle-hardened veterans. The best and most experienced troops in Europe who know Russian hybrid warfare are Ukrainians. They've been fighting it for 8 years. And so, yes, potentially you could invade. I don't believe myself a full-scale invasion is on the cards. He hasn't got enough troops for that. To do a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, he would need about 600,000 troops. He hasn't got that. So we're talking something smaller. Maybe like we heard in today's statement from the Foreign Office, attempt at regime change in Kiev with a pincer movement from Belarus and then from eastern Ukraine to try. But that would be, Kiev's a city of 4 million. Think of the logistics of urban warfare in that city. And also, as Navalny has said, think of the impact back into Russia of all of this. Putin, until now, has been pretending to Russians this is a civil war in Ukraine to hide his involvement. If there's an open war, he can't hide that anymore. Body bags will start coming back. We're talking thousands of body bags. I mean, Ukraine has a huge military industrial complex. It's got, it doesn't need NATO missiles. It's got its own surface-to-air missiles. They're called Neptunes. So that could have an impact on Russian domestic stability as well, because the Donbass is not something that's very close to Russian identity. The Crimea is. The Crimea for Russians is like Kosovo to Serbs. But the Donbass doesn't have that kind of, hot feeling for Russians. So Russians are going to be asking themselves, why do we have to have a low standard of living to fight for this area I've never heard of? So I think Putin's in a very delicate position here, particularly because now, compared to 2014, the West is on top of it in the sense of making,
Professor Kuzio, very briefly, if you can, is Vladimir Putin just playing politics? Is this saber rattling? Is he just waving his willy around?
Well, I hope I don't have to see it, but certainly I think we should do a whip round on GBNews for his anger management classes. But I think that he can't go away from this and save his face without doing something. He's got to do something. The question is, of course, we all don't know what.
What might that something be, Robert Fox? Because I'm curious what US President Joe Biden will do. Is it the case, as I've read this week, that Russia is now sanction-proof?
Not necessarily so, because I think if it really goes wrong, they could face economic collapse, and that is the fear in Moscow, I understand, where the economy hasn't grown, the professor may correct me on this, since 2000. If this goes on, he is in real trouble. He could go for a tactical gain, and he could face, he himself, with Putinism, whatever that is, and the Putin system, strategic defeat. To answer your question, I think you're absolutely right. It's the now you see me, now you don't, allegedly preached by General Gerasimov, the head of the armed services. I absolutely agree with Professor Kuzio. It will be non-obvious, and I think there will be a hit somewhere inside Ukraine, and it could be something odd in the Baltic, but my favourite is the Sea of Azov and somewhere around the coast where they can play a game which Putin is actually superb at, where he plays the game of lawfare, using international law to turn it upside down and turn it into his favour, like closing off the Sea of Azov, as he's done recently, to say, because there's live firing exercises happening out of the Russian bases there. That, by the way, since we're in Britain and for a British audience, will directly involve the Brits because we have a discrete naval understanding with Ukraine. That's what HMS Defender was really doing when she had that little bit of theatre and fireworks off Crimea in the summer.
And what do you think the timeline of this dispute might be, Robert? Do you see this one dragging on for months?
I don't necessarily, because I agree with Professor Kuzio. By the way, I want to add an addendum to what he said, which is absolutely spot on. He's got the wrong forces to occupy a major part of the territory of Ukraine. Those heavy really rather heavy metal, rather out-of-date tanks. You don't fight guerrilla wars with them. Blimey, the Russians found that in that terrible decade in Afghanistan after 1979. I think, though, that given the temperatures bringing things like helicopters forward, they don't like this weather. So I think that you'll see them go forward, it'll be a barn dance, and then he will pull back, because troops do not like being put into forward operating bases. Prepared for operations, you can only do it for 2 or 3 weeks at the most. So I think by the middle of February, we really will be able to do the big rain check on this phase of the crisis. But this kind of crisis is going to go on as long as we've got Putin. The rhythm will change when he's gone.
Yes, he's the ultimate disruptor, isn't he? A maverick, and as you said at the beginning of this conversation, Robert, inscrutable. Hard to actually work out what his motivations are. Perhaps even he doesn't know. We've talked about the wider implications, perhaps, for the West. We saw, didn't we, Robert, that clumsy withdrawal from Afghanistan. Is there a possibility that Vladimir Putin is trying his luck with a weak US president?
I think he's trying his luck because he sees a muddled Western alliance. And that's why I fear that precisely this week is the week to do it, where they don't quite know what to do because the EU allies are so divided that it seems that Macron really wants to have a rapprochement and understanding with Russia. The Germans don't know what to do because they're so beholden to Russia for gas. But the other thing is this week, I mean, it's great pantomime, but as it goes on over the years, it becomes more important. We've got the Italian presidential election. The Italians are reliant on Russian gas, and the Italians, from very early on in the 50s, through Mattei and the understanding with the Russians, got in to the whole complex of bringing Russian energy west, and they're going to be absolutely crucial. It's a muddle, and I think that Putin senses that. But I think it's very, very interesting, the very firm stance that the UK is taking here. This leak wasn't a leak, the announcement about possibly trying to create a puppet government for regime change was very well calculated, extremely well calculated, because the Americans put it out, and really it was a message from Liz Truss to the Americans: come on, get your act together, we've got to have a coherent campaign plan for this, adjustable, that can be changed. But I think talking will go on this week, but I think something could happen on the ground, an attempt to change the facts on the ground in the middle of the talking this coming week, so we can only be days away.
A fascinating, if unsettling, conversation. My profound thanks to Professor Taras Kuzio from the International Affairs think tank, the Henry Jackson Society, and Robert Fox, the Evening Standard defence editor. Thank you to both of you for your time. Lots more to come. We're going to talk about crazy COVID measures with my panel, and we'll speak to a lady behind a photograph I tweeted this week that went viral. Find out why shortly. Also, there's time for you to get your questions in to Lawrence Fox, actor turned politician. Mark at gbnews.uk. We don't do boring, not on my watch. See you in 2.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'll get to your emails very shortly. They're coming in thick and fast. Check out my big opinion monologue, which is now at GB News on Twitter. We've seen some pretty bonkers COVID policies over the course of the pandemic, but when I saw this on Twitter, I thought it was one of the most ridiculous things I've seen. Take a look at a boat, which is outside in Cambridge, and there is a Perspex screen in the middle of the boat. Hashtag follow the science. I retweeted it with the comment, Perspex screen on a boat. If you don't think we're in a collective state of mental illness, I can't help you. Well, that went viral. The woman who took that amazing photograph is Harriet Gould, and she joins me now. Hi, Harriet. We're just connecting with Harriet.
Hi, Mark.
What an amazing, brilliant to have you on show. Great piece of photojournalism. So you just took that photo earlier this week.
Yeah.
And you were just out and about in Cambridge. And first of all, what was your
going punting, and I saw it and thought it was fairly inexplicable, and so I thought I'd take a picture of it.
Yeah. So you're walking along the bank of the river, and you see this boat. Actually, was it a couple of boats that had these Perspex screens?
Yeah, there seemed to be one or two.
Yeah, remarkable. And so you, first of all, did you know what they were and what they were for when you first saw them?
It wasn't immediately apparent. I kind of assumed what we were getting at, or what they were getting at with having them there. So I did ask, and it was explained to me without any sense of irony that they were there because of the pandemic.
Right. Amazing. So the person that put those screens in was the proprietor of this sort of boat rental business. Does it look to have been a sort of, well, do you think it was enforced upon them, or was it just them interpreting the rules? Do you know?
I've no idea. I'm assuming it was an interpretation. And, you know, I mean, as far as anything scientific goes, far be it from me to cast aspersions. But I think, you know, there's a school of thought that could go along the lines of it makes people feel more comfortable. Again, I'm not sure how or why. You know, the boats are out in the open air on a moving river. Yeah, I didn't see the logic in it, personally. Thought it was...
No. It's gone viral online. Props to you for being so eagle-eyed and taking the perfect image of it. I mean, what are your feelings about the popularity, or at least the big audience that photo has received?
It's hard to say, really, isn't it? Because it's anything on social media is going to go one way or another, because it's kind of a siloed environment. So I guess people who see something that's going to substantiate their argument are going to use it to further substantiate their argument. You know, maybe it's a nice photo. Perhaps if the sky wasn't blue, it wouldn't have been so popular. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, how has it gone down? What has the reaction been, would you say?
I've no idea.
I mean, have you looked at the comments? Because most people seem to think it's an example of COVID theatre or just COVID overreach. It's the idea that we've, no pun intended, jumped the shark.
Yeah, I think I haven't looked at the comments at all. Even I saw there were quite a few, but I didn't scroll through them. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people are doing a lot of different things to try and protect themselves from the virus and protect people and protect their businesses. I think that's perhaps the key thing. If people are feeling that they have to do things to entice people back to use the services that they're offering, that might be a place that we're in quite realistically at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Well, Harriet, I think it's a really even-handed remark you've made there. Let's speak to my panel of Sajila, Peter and Emily. I mean, Emily, what do you think about this? COVID theatre?
I mean, most definitely. I think it's interesting to think about whether it was their interpretation of the government's guidance or if they were doing it as some kind of virtue signalling measure to try and, I don't know, show that they're, the most safe boat trip you can have in the UK. But I mean, it's just another example of just how ridiculous some of our reaction to COVID has been. And what's also quite interesting is that a lot of people who are very pro all these measures are now starting to sort of revise their views towards some of the most cruel and nonsensical rules, trying to distance themselves from ever having supported such things. And I think we'll see a lot of that. But this boat is just ridiculous. It's quite humorous.
I mean, it's not a boat-based pun, Emily, but they are rowing back, aren't they? I think that's the point. What do you think, Sajila? Do you think this is an example of us losing our collective minds?
Well, staying on the pun theme, I think it all depends on your perspective.
Oh, nicely done. That's better than what I had, let's be honest. But I mean, it's just silly, isn't it, Sajila, at this point?
I honestly didn't have an opinion on this either way. I looked at it and I thought, am I supposed to be angry? Am I supposed to not? And it's like, well, the restaurants were doing those little perspex things, dividers in gardens, because I remember the first, when we had the little break, when we had the little sorbet break in between the first two lockdowns. So I couldn't really, I'll be honest, I just don't have any emotion either way.
I think, Sajila, that I do have emotion. It does make me angry. I mean, I was amused by it, and it's a fantastic photograph by Harriet, but I think it's obviously, for example, environmentally devastating to be using all this plastic. There's no sensible science around these perspex screens. In fact, a report early in the pandemic suggested that they potentially trap aerosols in an indoor location. And I just think, Peter, this is organisations trying to look really sort of groovy, a sort of safety first, virtue signalling approach. We're doing our bit for your safety, but it's just mindless nonsense in my view.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You pretty much hit the nail on the head there. But it's also a phenomenon that Joe Rogan coined recently and went viral for: mass formation psychosis. In other words, evidence of people collectively losing the plot and becoming hysterical. When all the lockdown measures were still in place, everybody rushed to do this, and they were very proud to virtue signal doing this. Now Boris has lifted the restrictions, the scales are falling from people's eyes. They're realising it was a complete overreaction, and hopefully we'll be able to learn from it if this thing ever happens again. Hopefully we can go forward with more measured responses. And I have to say, very quickly, journalists should also take note of this, because for a long time, for 2 years, a lot of journalists didn't question power when they were enforcing these things. There were only a handful of journalists, you included, Mark, and hopefully other journalists going forward will remember their vocation when these things happen.
Question everything. Well, Harriet, you've helped to spark a debate on this show and on Twitter as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for letting me use that photograph, which did go viral, and rightly so. Harriet Gould there. Brilliant stuff. Lots more to come after this. My Mark Meets guest is the one, the only Lawrence Fox. I'll see you shortly.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking to get off to a largely dry but predominantly cloudy start, with some rain affecting northern Scotland. Let's look at the detail then. The southwest of England will be shrouded in a blanket of low cloud, which will leave at least some temperatures dipping too low, so frost will be localised. A similar story as we move across to the southeast as well, where low cloud will give some mist over hilltops. 1 or 2 cloud breaks are possible across Wales, but on the whole here too, it will be quite a gloomy start to the day. Across the northwest of England, some mist or fog is possible on high ground, and the cloud here also being thick enough to give the odd spot of drizzle in places. The northeast of England standing a better chance of catching 1 or 2 clear intervals, but where the cloud is broken, we're likely to see a slight frost begin the day. Rain affecting the north and the west of Scotland, but by contrast, a dry start on the cards across southern and eastern areas, again with a touch of frost likely. Areas near the north coast of Northern Ireland will have cloud breaks, but for the rest of the province, Monday looks set to be a dry day, although rather grey. And though the remainder of Monday morning, some rain will persist in the far northwest, elsewhere it will stay mainly dry, with largely cloudy skies. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
What is Putin playing at? So many emails coming in on this one. Frank in the Lakes says, Dear Mark, all of Russia exists with a deep historic link to the motherland. The West needs to learn from history. Don't tease the bear. How about this from Valentina, who says, Hi, I don't think Russia will get into war with Ukraine. They could just turn their gas supply off to ruin the country without invading it. Powerful thoughts on that one. Will says, Hi Mark, 30-odd years ago, I was as fit as a butcher's dog. This is on obesity. I was swimming, running, doing judo, but I was told I had high cholesterol and needed to change my diet. 10 years of so-called healthy eating didn't stop me having a bypass. I've discovered that everything except greens that I was told to eat was healthy. Seed oils, fruit, pasta were causing oxidation of my LDL and probably led to my heart disease. So since last February, I've been on a low-carb diet to stop my LDL being oxidized. As a byproduct, I've lost 10 kilograms. Interesting stuff. And finally, on bonkers COVID restrictions, Michael, I turned you into a female there, very 2022. Michael says, Dear Mark, in December, the BBC did 2 filmed-in concert shows with Duran Duran and Coldplay, with a studio audience of 200. Despite every member of the audience being COVID tested and cleared from having the virus, they were made to wear a mask throughout. And other BBC shows like Pointless Celebrity have those lunatics perspex sheets put between conferring celeb couples. This is also bonkers to watch and makes no scientific sense either. Well, I've seen those chat shows where you've got celebrities with a perspex screen between them, and then the second the show finishes, they're all huddled up together doing group photos. One rule for them, another for the rest of us. Lots to get through. My Mark Meets guest is actor turned politician Lawrence Fox. But first, here are the headlines with Polly.
It's 10 o'clock. The top stories this hour. Downing Street says an MP who claims she was sacked because of her Muslimness was in fact invited to make a formal complaint but failed to do so. Nusrat Ghani lost her job as Transport Minister in 2020. The Prime Minister then spoke to her after learning of what he called the extremely serious allegation. In a statement, the MP says Boris Johnson did write to her saying he couldn't get involved, but that she only wanted the government to take the matter seriously and investigate it properly. Here's what the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, had to say.
I believe actions, a claim like this, as serious as this, should, but it can only happen if the person making the complaint makes it formally. That's when the procedures kick in. And just to be clear about this, that advice was given to Nuz back in 2020.
Dominic Raab. Britain has accused the Russian President Vladimir Putin of plotting to install a pro-Moscow leader as head of the government in Ukraine. In an unusual move, the UK Foreign Office named the former Ukrainian MP Yevgeny Murayev as a potential pro-Kremlin candidate to take over in Kiev. The former head of the army, Lord Richard Dannett, told GB News the West needs to work out what Putin's objective is.
We have to remember that scrape him to the core and you find an unreconstructed KGB colonel whose beloved Warsaw Pact and Soviet Union was destroyed by the cohesion of the West in 1989 when the Berlin Wall came down. And what he would like to achieve more than anything else is to sow discord and doubt amongst the minds of NATO members and break up that cohesion of NATO.
Lord Dannett. A suspect accused of killing a British man with a sickle is being questioned by police in Thailand. 49-year-old Marcus Evans was found dead in his home with knife wounds. Another British man, who's 55, was injured trying to stop the assailant. Police say an initial investigation found they were attacked for playing music too loudly in the early hours of Saturday morning. Here, the former Housing Secretary is calling for the national insurance hike, which he approved, to be postponed. Robert Jenrick says the government's responding to the cost of living crisis lamentably slowly. He added that confronting harsh realities is part of alleviating the situation for low and middle income families. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News. Now more from Mark Dolan and Tonight.
Thanks, Polly. Actually, Lorna and Alistair, could you get Polly back in vision, please, just for a moment? Hello. Hi, Polly. Fantastic bulletin. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've got to take you out of the world of news for a moment because I understand that you are a Hollywood superstar because you make an appearance in a brand new Hollywood film. It's called The 355. It stars Jessica Chastain, Penelope Cruz and Diane Kruger, who are three very good friends of mine and ex-girlfriends. And they also feature you. You're in this movie. Here is Polly Middlehurst reading the news, telling everyone that the world is about to end in this incredible movie, The 355. So first of all, Polly, congratulations. How did you get that gig?
Oh, Mark, did I mention I was in a movie? I mean, yeah, my agent called me. It's a bit of a dull story. So I said, why not? Put a tape together. I've been doing it for a while. I understand a bunch of actresses went for it, but I think the fact that I've been reading news for about 20 years made a difference. Simon Kinberg, who's a director, had seen me before on the telly in hotel rooms and went, I'll have that one, please. And so that was it.
Well, I think it's a brilliant performance. I'm going to ask Lorna to run it again in a second. But clearly, you're playing a newsreader, which is a role to which you are accustomed. Did they give you a script?
They gave me a script. I was called to filming in Notting Hill. I was very excited. I probably got a bit overexcited. We were taken to a house in Notting Hill, which was just somebody's house that they'd let out to the film company. I was shown to an upstairs room that was, I think, a kid's bedroom, but in the corner they'd stuck one of these complicated Hollywood cameras and a green screen. And I read it out about 3 times, and that was it. And I was, I want to stay. I want a bigger part. Is that it? So it only took me about an hour to do, and then I had to go to London a bit later on and do the ADR, which is the additional dialogue replacement post-production, if you like. And then my son and I were lucky. If people look at my Twitter feed, @TellyPolly, you can see I took my son along to the cast and crew screening in London, because the movie's out now. And I was able to meet all the other small part actors as well. I think I'm on for about 6 seconds, so it's not a lot to get excited about.
Oh, listen, you made it last. How many takes did you have to do?
I think 3.
That's pretty decent, I'll be honest with you. That's better than George Clooney. And Polly, did you receive millions for this? I assume that you're now just a newsreader purely as a hobby.
Funny you should say that. My friend who I went to school with, who now works for Fox Studios in LA, she's one of the directors on Family Guy, actually. She was on The Simpsons before. She said, oh, you're going to get 10 grand in residuals for that. No. Let's just say what a plasterer makes in a day, about that.
Well, let me tell you...
I'd have done it for free, you know?
No, listen, the best role you've ever played is as star newsreader here at GB News.
Thank you.
My viewers love you, but if they want more of you, why don't they go and see The 355? It's winning rave reviews, and it's in cinemas now, starring Jessica Chastain, Penelope Cruz, and Polly Middlehurst. In fact, I'm quite interested in awards season. I'm thinking best Oscar for a best supporting newsreader. Polly, brilliant work. Well, speaking of brilliant actors and actresses, it's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the big names in the world of showbiz, politics, sport, business, academia and beyond, plus those who simply have a big story to tell. And my next guest's story couldn't be bigger. An actor turned politician, a man who's never out of the headlines, Laurence Fox. Graduating from the elite acting school of RADA in 2001, Laurence quickly landed on his feet with a role in Robert Altman's Oscar-winning Gosford Park. He then went through the military uniform stage of his career. I do like a man in uniform. In Island at War, The Last Drop, Death Watch, Ultimate Force and Colditz. I believe he's still got the uniforms at home. Actor Kevin Whately suggested him for a role in Inspector Moore's spin-off Lewis as Detective Sergeant James Hathaway, the partner of Lewis himself, played by the aforementioned Whately. Well, the series proved to be a monster ratings hit for ITV. Laurence went on to play Prince Charles in Whatever Love Means, Weasley, one of Jane Austen's suitors in Becoming Jane, and so his glittering acting CV continued, as well as a much-publicised marriage to the actress and singer Billie Piper. They later parted ways, but have 2 much-loved and fine sons to show for it. But following an infamous appearance on BBC Question Time in which he objected to being called a white privileged male, Laurence has become an outspoken proponent of freedom of speech, personal liberty, and has entered the so-called culture wars by rejecting extreme political correctness, often referred to as wokeism. Since then, Laurence has formed a new political party called Reclaim, and he even ran for London Mayor in 2021. Always authentic, never short of an opinion, and perhaps, dare I say it, slightly misunderstood by some. Laurence Fox, welcome to GB News.
Thank you so much for having me.
Is it safe to shake hands? I mean, are we...
I think we can hug.
Come on.
Hug?
Are we allowed?
Mwah. I love you.
Well, listen, I love you too. You've been COVID secure for 2 years, haven't you? I mean, you've not had any sort of engagement with the sort of hyperbole around COVID, whether
I've been shielding for 2 years.
Have you been shielding?
Yes. I don't think the restrictions are enough.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we should have more.
Should put you in a like glass.
I'm upset now. Someone spray me. Yes, no, I've ignored the whole thing because it's a sham.
Well, we'll get to that. It's a fascinating conversation, and it's important that we look at the pandemic in 360. But let's talk about you and your amazing career. So I noticed, and I've been reading about you all afternoon, that you were expelled from school.
I wasn't expelled. I was asked not to return. It's a different thing. I still can have an OH tie.
Is that right? But what were the circumstances around that? Are you able to tell me?
There was a sexual encounter on a dance floor.
You were a teenager?
I was a teenager. It was a long way away. How did the teacher know I was doing what I was doing?
But I thought it was symptomatic of the guy that you would become, that there's a hint of the rebel in you.
Oh, yeah.
And also, you strike me as somebody that's, it's your nature that if you're told not to do something, then you go the other way.
Well, it's symptomatic of the nature of a proportion of the population, isn't it? 10% at least are sceptical of most things, and I'm one of those people. So they call them rebels in other environments, but in the sort of broad spectrum of the population, you need skeptics, and I'm a skeptic.
Yeah. And how did your nature and your personality lend itself to acting? I mean, was that a good fit for you going into acting?
Well, acting's great, but for me, what happened with acting was I was sat there for the first 3 or 4 years of my career, and everyone was like, I want to get this part, I want to get this part, I want this part, I want this part so bad. And then after 3 or 4 years of that, I just sort of went, you know what, I want that part, but I'm also happy with this part. And I got to spend time with Kevin Whately, who is, a proper lefty. So I got to spend 10 years with a lefty, arguing politics with lefties. So for me, it was an ultimate dream. And I lost the sort of aggro that you get from as a sort of young actor of going, I need to win everything. And you act a lot with actors who want to win. They're like, your character should be more scared of me in this scene. And you're like, well, you're not very scary, so be more scary. So, I love acting, but...
And did your success in acting change you? I mean, clearly it changed your financial circumstances. You had a successful career, but what did acting do to you, especially once you became a star?
It made me love language more than anything, and the appropriate use of it. I think ultimately, my father gave us, when they moved out of home, he gave us all the file that he'd kept on all of us, all of our correspondence to him, because we wrote to him letters. Back in the day, we wrote letters to our parents from school. That's what happened. I'm 43. I know it's now texts and WhatsApps and whatever. But my dad gave me a file, and I wrote him these letters about Macbeth and various plays that I was reading and how I felt about it. So it changed my understanding of what the meaning of words are, how they should be used appropriately, and what creativity is. And, I sort of desperately hunt around the internet now for films that are good, and I'm confronted with films that are really bad. And, occasionally a good one pops up. But I was sort of drawn mainly to what creativity can do to culture and what culture that can then do to politics, I think.
You come from an acting dynasty. I know that's a sort of, tedious question to be asking you. You'll have heard it 1,000 times. But was it a burden, that surname of Fox, was it a burden or a blessing?
Both. Because, but weirdly, again, in terms of the sort of class war which is ignored, is to the middle-class girl in Putney who got her place at RADA because her dad pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, it was a major problem. But to the bricklayer in Liverpool, it wasn't a problem at all. They were like, good for you, mate. Go for it. It was great. And as you can see, accents are my skill.
But I would have thought that when you auditioned, or whatever sort of audition pieces you had to do when you were trying to get into RADA, you had to be a good actor, maybe better because of your surname.
Perhaps, but, I've had a very privileged life. So, I've sort of been up and down in terms of money and things like that, but I've lived a very privileged life compared to other people. So
did you enjoy acting? Was it a calling or a job?
It was something to do to stop me working in an office, because I was a bit... My dad said to me one breakfast, perhaps you should try acting. Because you earning 350 quid a week in the office and then going out on a massive bender with your mates on the weekend isn't really moving your life forward.
Yeah.
So I auditioned for RADA, and then they said no. On my first one, I got right to the end and they said no. And then I was so annoyed with them that I thought, I've got to beat you. Because that's what comes with the rebellious nature, isn't it? That desire to prove somebody wrong, which is happening at the moment.
And how has your acting coloured your approach to politics and being a figure of public life? I mean, is there any crossover at all? You're an excellent speech maker and your videos are always very powerful and compelling. But is there any other aspect of what you learnt as an actor that now guides you as a leader and as a politician?
Well, I think language. For me, I was with people last night who were very, very, very angry about what's happened recently, and they all go on about the fact that there must be reciprocity for what's happened. And I've said, well, no, it's a free speech issue originally. And I think how acting has coloured my political thinking is if you don't use a word accurately, then that word doesn't mean anything. Yeah. So it's like saying you're an anti-vaxxer. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm pro-freedom of bodily autonomy and free choice. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. That's a very different thing, even though I am actually proudly now an anti-vaxxer, because it's all rubbish and it needs to end.
Because you've been pushed in that direction, really.
Yeah, I think the debate has been destroyed, and actually, as it falls apart now, I've come into today. I was thinking as I was coming in here, I was like, I'm really, 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 really angry, fundamentally furious, because I never got to grieve my mother's death, and she was hastily shoved into the ground. They were like, COVID. Got to put her in the ground quickly, and only 5 of you can come. My mum had 5 kids, so that's my dad, that's 6. What about the partners? What about the wives? What about the husbands? We're all put in this thing. And I'm sat there going, my mother was put in the ground without ever having a chance to say goodbye to her best friend, who's 82, said, I've never had a chance to say goodbye to my mother. And she was hastily put in the ground. And we all had to make a joke out of it to make it feel better. But I imagine there are millions of people around this country that are feeling a sense of absolute apoplectic rage about what has happened. And I'm just starting actually to grieve my mum, weirdly.
Well, my condolences to you and your family.
No, don't. She's still talking to me, it's fine.
Is that right? Well, I'm pleased to hear that. And of course, she'll always be with you in spirit. But, that's, as you said, what so many people have been going through in the pandemic. It's obviously so inhumane. I tend to agree with you on that. Do you feel you've paid too high a price, though, for becoming a politician? I mean, any regrets for what you've left behind, which was a successful acting career?
I'm not a politician. Look at me.
Well, you founded a political party.
Yeah, I know, but what we're going to do with our political party...
Donald Trump wasn't a politician, and look what happened. He became president.
Yeah.
So anything's possible, Lawrence.
God forbid. Look at the bloke who's in charge now.
Yeah, we just need another blonde bombshell.
Well, I think that... I do think there's a point to the fact that leadership is driven by people who don't want to be leaders, but... I am so unerringly furious, and it's grown today. I can't believe it. I'm like, why am I feeling all of this pain? And I'm thinking, up and down this country, and we're all putting it to bed now. We're all going, well, no, we'll just pass off the vaccine mandate. It doesn't matter. And what about the care home workers? What about all of these people? What about these people, these individual lives? So if you put some posh twat like me into politics, who am I there to represent? Them.
You're not doing this for money. You're not doing this out of
I do everything for money. We all do everything for money.
But you've relinquished money to become a politician, or at least somebody that speaks out, a commentator. And what about friends? I mean, have you found out who your friends are in the last few years?
Yeah, you just see if they're wearing a mask or not, and then you walk off.
Is that it? Is that your acid test?
It's just like, all right, so you want to comply and go, that's fine. I mean, I don't have any friends who wear masks. And I think hugging is crucial. And I think everyone should hug everybody all the time. And, if God had intended us to not transmit a virus, he would have created this weird skin flap over our face to protect us from other people's coffee germy bits.
Well, Nicola Sturgeon has said that we may have face masks for the next few years, certainly in Scotland. Some scientists suggest that we should have masking every winter to deal with the flu and COVID. What are your thoughts about ongoing COVID restrictions?
Nihilists. Live, love, be with the people you care about. Be around them. Be close to your children. Don't let teaching unions dominate the discussion over how they educate our children. Just live and love. It's not hard.
And listen, you are, as I mentioned in my introduction, I think, often mischaracterised. I would suggest in some circles...
I'm a far-right extremist. Sadiq Khan called me one.
Yeah, that's clearly a mischaracterisation, probably a libel, really. But... you're not lacking in empathy, but what about that issue of overflowing hospitals? I mean, did you not have pause for thought in December of 2020 when we were told the NHS was days from being overwhelmed?
I didn't have pause for thought the minute I was phoned by a journalist who said there's a virus coming from China and that 500,000 people are going to die. And I was like, it's bollocks.
Really?
That was my first thing. And it's proven to be absolute rubbish. 17,900 what is it?
Yeah, it's about 17,500 people over 2 years
so we've killed,
who died directly from or with COVID with no other comorbidity.
So this is an important point. This has nothing to do with the virus and never has had anything to do with the virus at all whatsoever.
What do you believe
it's a fundamental reorganisation of society driven by big tech and driven by, China and all of that sort of stuff. It's not driven by a virus. The virus was an opportunity for them to do what they wanted to do, and Boris actually has finally stood up and gone, you know what, I can't deal with this, or I'm going to lose power. Politicians want to be...
But why would countries willingly destroy their own economies, preside over enormous human damage for some kind of tech project?
It's the cockroach salad, isn't it? It's like, if you have a salad with a cockroach in it, the whole salad is ruined. But if you have a bowl of feces with a really nice chocolate in the middle of it, it's not ruined. It's all about messing with our minds. And I'm saying, no, this has been a lie from day one. It's a lie now. It's been proven now. And, retribution, which is not what I want, but I do want some kind of reconciliation.
But when you say a lie, I mean, we can debate, can't we, the virus, the origins of it, the lab...
We know where the virus came from. Let's stop pretending where the virus came from.
Is certainly being taken massively seriously.
The lab leak, it came out of the lab. Well, it was paid for by Anthony Fauci. Game over. Come on.
This is now entering mainstream thought. It would have got you cancelled a year ago for saying that, but now it's looking an increasingly likely option. But a virus exists, different permutations of SARS-CoV-2. So therefore, people were getting ill. They were going to hospital. Some people watched.
My fiancé nearly died of the thing.
So when you say it's a lie, I mean, isn't that quite strong language? We can debate the severity of the virus.
Every single day in the world, there are illnesses that kill people. That happens. Do you want to obliterate them all?
Well,
is that the plan?
Absolutely
Not
right.
you, but just one.
For sure, 1,600 people.
Do you want to kill an economy, kill your children's education, destroy their ability to see their teachers? I have an autistic son. He can't read face features. He can't do it. These people need to be held to account now, and it needs to be done responsibly and reliably. But the pushback begins today. They need to be held to account.
But what I want to explore is the idea of a lie, because I think we share a lot of common ground when it comes to the COVID measures, which I think have been very destructive. Professor Jay Bhattacharya, one of the leading medics in the world, has said that it's been the biggest public health catastrophe in history. So, there are scientists who think it's been a mistake. But why use the word lie? Isn't that inflammatory? And doesn't that cast you in the sort of territory of conspiracy theorists, which then possibly loses your
Trusted News Initiative, isn't it? Conspiracy theorist. That's what you become.
Well, like an anti-vaxxer. It's a label to put you down.
Again, we were talking about language. I love language. It's important to me that we use it appropriately. We've not used this appropriately. This was not a deadly pandemic that ran across the world and killed millions and millions of people. It's being proved day after day after day. We're now in the process of peace and reconciliation, as we were in apartheid in South Africa. That's what we're doing. And I hope it's peaceful. But at the moment, my fury, my deep fury that I had to watch my mother be put in the ground and not be able to hug the others. And I'm sure those stories and sentiments are shared by hundreds of thousands of people around this country. It's a lie. It was a lie from day one, and they partied in 10 Downing Street because they knew it was a lie from day one, and they tried to reorganise our society. And I look forward to the retribution, but I don't want it to be violent, and I want it to be peaceful, but it's been appalling.
Now, clearly the government will say that they did everything to preserve hospital capacity and to limit the number of people, who would, lose their lives to COVID. But that one, is going to be history will provide a judgment, won't it? And that's going to come in time. What do you hope to do now as the leader of Reclaim? What are your political ambitions?
So we've realised that possibly the Reclaim Party is not easy to vote for hugely. So what we're going to do is we're going to attack the law. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go, where's the law bad? And how can we change it? Where, certainly over the next problems that we're facing, which is net zero, another ideologically driven madhouse of stupidity, and diversity, equity, inclusion. Get rid of it.
And so you'll possibly have, I mean, there'll be legal action.
I'm in legal action currently. So, and Harry Miller, our chairman, has just won against college of policing. You know, he's changed the law. He's changed the law, one guy.
And what about working with some of the other smaller parties that share a similar set of values? Heritage.
All I want to do is work with all the other smaller parties, but I've spent hundreds of hours speaking to them. And also, I'm quite chilled. I don't want to be in charge of anything. Genuinely. Like, I don't want to sit there and be like, I'm in charge. Everyone shut up while I tell you. I mean, I've got an opinion, which I'll voice, but I don't want to be in charge of anything. And what I want to do is be part of something, part of a movement. And there's lots of movements. Together have done some great stuff. Neil does the great stuff. You do great stuff. You know, we talk together. We provide that dissenting voice, that crucial 10% of the population that doesn't want to buy into this absolute beep.
And what about wokeism, so-called extreme political correctness? You've spoken out strongly on that. Why does it matter?
Because it fundamentally undermines Western liberal democracy. So you're asking people to redefine the meaning of words. So what does a child learn first? The child learns mama dada. That's what they learn. Like, I've got gay friends who've got kids, and I don't know what they call them, dada dada. And that's fine as part of a thing. I'm not discriminatory in any way whatsoever towards that sort of thing. But what the trans lobby are saying is that there's no such thing as a woman. It's like, yes, there is. There's a woman. You know, as Matt Walsh said, if you bury her in the ground and you dig her up in 100 years, you'll find that her DNA is female. So there
are males that identify as female, which is no problem, but there is only one biological definition of a woman.
You're an adult human female who can give birth to a child, you know, or not, depending on...
And what about acting? Is there a way back? I think you're in a feature film.
I am.
About the Biden family?
Yeah, I know. At least I went non-controversial.
Absolutely. Now, when's that coming out?
I think probably late spring. But where will it go on?
Do you feel you've been cancelled by the acting world?
Oh, yeah. No, they wouldn't accept me on set. The Sparks would. So when you walk onto set, you walk past the Sparks, the Chippies, and you walk towards the camera. And as you get close to the camera, everyone gets a bit woker. And, you know, by the time you get to the actress, she's like, possibly do that. It's really offensive. Do you
think it will come full circle, though? Do you think that ultimately there'll be a reaction against this wokeism and you could start making movies again?
I think we have to create an alternate culture because wokeism is really powerful. It's like the surge of a new religion. It's like it's deeply concerning. It's nihilism. It's the end of, you know,
it's anti-art, isn't it?
Well,
because all art is problematic.
Well,
that's what art's supposed to be.
Art should turn around and go, wokeism's silly. Let's make a film about how silly wokeism is. But instead you get a moral lecture from Netflix about diversity, equity and inclusion. And also what's so weird is I'm speaking to a lot of people in the business who turn around and go, I'm being directed by someone just because they were a diversity hire who has no idea what they're doing in terms of technical aspects. And you try and organise 170 people to put on a film and your director is only hired because of the fact that they tick a certain set of boxes. I mean, yeah, Zara Sultana.
So, only a couple of seconds to go. Have you just got engaged?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And
she told me to be good, and she's already going to be annoyed.
You've been an absolute angel.
She's going to be annoyed with me.
It's been a...
Be yourself, but be good.
Well, look, we're not going to cancel anyone on this show. And this is the home of free speech. You're angry about your mum. You're angry about lockdowns and other COVID measures. I share that sentiment. But in a more broad sense, are you in a good place?
Yeah, I'm in a good place because I'm happy that I'm right about what's going on. I'm very, very angry about...
Has it affected your mental health?
Hugely, and my children's as well. As I said, you know, I have an autistic elder son and a younger son who's, you know, I've got kids. Yeah. And for anyone out there who has children, I think this has been an absolute disaster. And it is the greatest failed public health experiment in history.
Well, every day, I mean, I just tweeted earlier that the horror of what I consider to be the mistake of lockdowns is a daily nightmare, because every day there's a new story. And today the Mail are reporting that children entering secondary school now have a reading age, some of them of 6, because of lockdowns. So this is the damage we've
disgusting. How dare we as adults do that to our children? How dare we? And that's where my rile comes. I take, as the Prime Minister, I take full responsibility. The next sentence is, and therefore I resign. It's not, and therefore I'm going to do nothing and carry on being a bit of a beep. You know, it's like, I'm disgusted with the moral discrepancy of our political class. I'm disgusted by them. I look at them and I go, you lot, I can find someone, as I did actually, I got a hug from someone in M&S in the services on the way down the motorway today. And I'm like, you'd be much better at running the country than these beeps.
Because you're not a politician.
I don't want to be a politician.
Perhaps.
I'm a concerned citizen.
I think you're the reluctant campaigner, but you always speak from the heart. You give good opinion, and I do hope you'll join us on the sofa as a panellist soon.
I would love to.
We'd love to have you. Listen, congratulations on your engagement. My best to your boys as well. I know they're a great pair of lads. Chip off the old block. My thanks to Lawrence Fox. A fascinating conversation. I think you'll agree. Well, this one might rattle Lawrence's cage, because we're going to talk about Jamie Oliver, who has hired offence advisors who are going to make sure that his recipes are sufficiently woke. You can't make this stuff up, can you? And new research reveals that wine helps fend off COVID. That's right, drink wine and stay safe from COVID. Who knew? I'll see you after the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking to get off to a largely dry but predominantly cloudy start with some rain affecting northern Scotland. Let's look at the detail then. The southwest of England will be shrouded in a blanket of low cloud, which will leave at least some temperatures dipping too low, so frost will be localised. A similar story as we move across to the southeast as well, where low cloud will give some mist over hilltops. 1 or 2 cloud breaks are possible across Wales, but on the whole here too, it will be quite a gloomy start to the day. Across the northwest of England, some mist or fog is possible on high ground, and the cloud here also being thick enough to give the odd spot of drizzle in places. The northeast of England standing a better chance of catching 1 or 2 clear intervals, but where the cloud is broken, we're likely to see a slight frost begin the day. Rain affecting the north and the west of Scotland, but by contrast, a dry start on the cards across southern and eastern areas, again with a touch of frost likely. Areas near the north coast of Northern Ireland will have cloud breaks, but for the rest of the province, Monday looks set to be a dry day, although rather grey. And though the remainder of Monday morning, some rain will persist in the far northwest, elsewhere it will stay mainly dry, with largely cloudy skies. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
You are watching Tonight Live with me, Mark Dolan. It's time to look at the headlines now with our fantastic panel. And I'm delighted to say with me is political commentator Emily Carver, author Peter Lloyd, and comedian Sajila Kershi. Now, Jamie Oliver has revealed he employs offence advisors to vet his recipes to avoid being accused of cultural appropriation. The celebrity chef said his Empire roast chicken from 2012 in a recipe book would probably not be accepted today, despite him saying it's a bloody good recipe. In 2018, he was accused of cultural appropriation by Labour's then shadow Women and Equalities Minister Dawn Butler for launching punchy jerk rice. And in 2014, he enraged West Africans with a jollof rice recipe on his website, causing a huge backlash dubbed Jollof Gate. So what do we think about this? Emily, cultural appropriation.
Yeah, well...
In the kitchen.
In the kitchen. You know, I wish we lived in a world where we, you know, encouraged people to cook other people's food. I mean, I thought that we did live in that world with all the different products we have available to us through, you know, free market and people moving around the world. That's a good thing. It was quite interesting because, of course, this is probably quite a smart move from him in some respects because of all the backlash he's had before. I remember Dawn Butler got so angry, didn't she? She set off a massive Twitter storm. But, I mean, I think that Jamie Oliver has bigger problems than this. I mean,
yeah.
so
bigger,
many
bigger
of his
fish to fry.
Much bigger fish to fry, I imagine, in terms of keeping his profit margins going.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, Peter, what do you think about this? Perhaps we should be mindful of other cultures when it comes to cuisine.
You'll be surprised to learn, Mark, that I completely disagree with that.
There's a surprise, yeah.
Look, there is no such thing as cultural appropriation. It does not exist. It's some theory, some esoteric theory that was conjured up in academia and has now leaked into the mainstream. Nobody owns culture. There are no dividing lines between culture. We are constantly told we live in a multicultural society. So that should extend to food. It's a no-brainer. I'm really disappointed, actually. I mean, I understand from a business perspective why he's done it, because it's essentially insurance from the woke mob, and, you know, when they're outside with their torches trying to destroy him. But it's frustrating when high-profile people don't stand up to this kind of behaviour. I would respect him more if he just said, look, I'm sorry if you get offended, but it's not my job to not offend you.
Yeah, I mean, Sajila, isn't a chef free to make what he or she wants to in a kitchen?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I'm probably more offended by the curries that I used to be forced to eat when I was at school with raisins and curry powder, or asked by my friends to, on a Friday, let's go for a curry. No, I can get better at home. I can cook you better. Because obviously, like, if you belong to that particular culture, you're going to make that food better. However, I think culture is a moving thing. It's a moving thing. It's not stagnant. And if we want to get away from let's protect the British culture, whatever that is, that culture has moved along so far that curry is now the national dish. However, my family, when they come over, they always say, oh, can we go and get some hunter's beef? I don't know what hunter's beef is.
That's brilliant.
But they're trapped somewhere in the past about hunter's beef. And fish and chips is traditionally what British food is. I'm better at making spicy food than bland food, I have to say. So if I make bland food really well, am I culturally appropriating? I don't know.
I'm sure you're not. Well, look, I think it's got to be a free-for-all in the kitchen. But what do you think? Mark at gbnews.uk. Now, red wine could help stave off COVID, according to new research from the British database UK Biobank. People who drink more than 5 glasses a week had a 17% lower risk of catching the virus. Experts believe it's due to the polyphenol content which can inhibit the effect of viruses such as flu and respiratory tract-related infections. Beer and cider drinkers had a nearly 28% higher chance of getting COVID, regardless of how much they consumed. So, Sajila, what got you through lockdown?
Oh, gosh. Definitely cooking food like I was doing a TV cooking programme. If anybody's out there, hire me. I'm a really great cook. And telenovelas, Spanish telenovelas. Yeah, I had an intravenous drip attached to Netflix, just watching them. 5 seasons.
And these are like Spanish soap operas, are they?
Yeah. They're amazing.
Is it like Spanish EastEnders, basically?
Yeah, Spanish EastEnders, but with drug cartels and guns and violence. I loved it.
God, I might have to watch. Sounds a lot better than Albert Square. What got you through lockdown, Peter?
Illegal lockdown parties.
OK. I wondered where that was going. Well, that helped the Prime Minister, so obviously you're in very good company.
You weren't in that church that got stormed, were you?
No. But it's great. We used to go around to... it was kind of like what I imagined it was like in Prohibition America, you know, when people used to hang out and drink their hooch. But my friends and I would just gather in someone's flat and we'd share all the details on our WhatsApp group and then we'd covertly just turn up.
So you did? You knowingly broke the rules?
Yeah. OK,
and has that played on your conscience at all?
In light of what happened at Downing Street? Nah.
No, you've been proved
I
right.
think he's safe.
How about you? What got you through lockdown?
Well, I think that's quite interesting that people with 5 glasses of wine, drinking 5 glasses of wine or more a week, makes them less susceptible to coronavirus. Because I, to my knowledge, have not contracted coronavirus, and I certainly have been drinking more than 5 glasses of wine a week. So
go.
Maybe that is why. I've managed to swerve it. But yes, nice wine, nice meals, family, and so on. It got me through.
Oh, brilliant. Well, listen, I'll tell you what. My pressure cooker got me through. My pressure cooker and podcasts.
Podcasts, yes.
Two great inventions. Well, lots more to come. Don't forget, later in the show, we are going to play another game based around the news. And we'll talk about a head teacher that's lifted rules on long hair, bleached hair and man buns in the classroom. Find out why after this.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
So many emails coming in response to my conversation with Lawrence Fox. Christine says, I couldn't agree more with Lawrence. I'm sure he's correct about so many things that he thinks. I really hope he hasn't lost his chance to act again. I liked watching his performances. Thank you, Christine, for that. This is from Yotor, who's just said they really enjoyed the Lawrence Fox conversation. And on cultural appropriation, Helen says, dear Mark, cultural appropriation is a one-way street and is only used as criticism when Europeans partake. And how about this from Declan? I'm an African food connoisseur. Where I live, I have the finest worldwide takeaways. I love our local specialist foreign foods. I eat from a different country 365 days a year. Lucky you, Declan. Well, let's crack on. A head teacher has scrapped rules banning long or bleached hair, afros or man buns, and has urged other schools to rethink their uniform policies to be more culturally inclusive. The Mail newspaper report that students at All Boys Verulam School in St Albans still have to dress smartly, but no longer are required to wear a blazer or tie in the sixth form. In the past, students could have been sent home from the school in Hertfordshire if their hair was extreme in style, colour or length. Well, what do we think about this panel? Do you think that it's time to let these secondary school kids have their hair the way they want it?
I mean, it's been such a sticking point in our media, hasn't it? There's been all these stories about kids being sent home and then campaigning to be allowed to have their hair as they like it. A lot of it's been around Afro hair, which has been a source of controversy. With this story, I am slightly uncomfortable with the idea that pupils should be allowed to wear their own cultural dress to school. I do kind of take a view that's more in France, that you shouldn't be showing your religious background in your dress at school. You know, I think people should be sort of even, and I think uniform is good at sort of equalising everyone.
So you draw the line at clothing, but for hairstyles, knock yourself out.
I mean, I think people should have to tie their hair back if it's too long.
So
I think it should be neat. It shouldn't be in the way of their eyes, their vision. I can't get too angry about people plaiting their hair or, you know, having it a little bit different style. I mean, I think
it's not the military, is it?
No, I think that's fine. But when it goes too far, you know.
What do you think? I mean, what kind of hairstyle did you rock at school, Peter?
Oh, I mean, you're making me relive it now, which is terrible. I hate to say. So I went to school I was in high school in the mid-90s, and I was rocking a kind of grunge, long hair, parted in the middle.
Right.
Gosh.
I wanted to be Jordan Catalano from My So-Called Life, and I ended up looking like something much, much worse. So, yeah.
Well, look, do you think that these young people need to have that freedom of expression, especially in our multicultural society?
No, I mean, not necessarily, not at school. I mean, for me, I think I agree with you. I'm not so bothered about the hairstyles, but I think uniforms are really good because, A, they're a leveller. So if there's a class divide between pupils, you know, and some have conspicuous consumption and like to wear the latest labels, that's kind of erased if you have a school uniform. And also, it kind of encourages a sense of belonging with the student body. It makes you feel camaraderie with your fellow pupils. And I think that's important.
Well, I know this with my kids as well, which is just normal black shoes cost about 20 or 30 quid, whereas Nike trainers could be 100.
Right. And also, anything else, you want your children to focus on whatever's being taught in the lesson. You don't want people to be distracted by footwear or whatever somebody.
Also, they look a right mess, the schools that don't have uniform. I mean, Jesus, what some of the kids wear to school. Crop tops, tracky bottoms, you know, so much makeup. I mean, so much distraction.
And that's just the mums.
Boobs all over the place. Bums all over the place.
Oh, my goodness. The mind boggles. I'm just trying to imagine if I was at a school like that, I would never have concentrated. I mean, Sajila, what do you think? Hair. How important is hair in the classroom and in a school setting? Does it matter?
Well, my son's got an afro hair, like it's actually lockdown growth of afro. It's grown really big, but he had to sort of like tame it and have it really short when he was younger. So he couldn't express himself with the hair that he wanted to express, which is now he gets to do that. I'm in agreement that uniforms leveller, you know, obviously there's always going to go back to people who haven't got the same amount of money as to buy those £100 trainers. It's great. I'm going to disagree with both of you in terms of if they want to wear a religious dress, they will wear it, but actually if that comes to that, then they're going to probably feel the pressure to conform as well, because everybody wants to be the same. But I do think that a uniform is a good idea. A uniform just makes us all, and just because we're still going to have individuality. I remember, you know, kind of taking my skirt up when it was supposed to be below knee length. You know, wearing my first bra when I shouldn't be wearing it. You know, all those kind of things. You do it anyway. And by the way, I was a Durrani.
Oh,
romantic, new romantic.
Doesn't get better than that. I mean, one question I've got though is notwithstanding hairstyles, whether young people are now getting a bit sloppy in their dress, just generally. Because I mean, I can't get my kids to wear like chinos or a smart shirt or a blazer. They just won't put it on. You know, it's anathema to them, and I think that's generational. Don't you think that's a problem? That when they're adults, they're just going to be super casual.
A generation of scruff bags.
Yeah.
God, good.
What happened to
Another
smart
thing to worry
casual?
about.
Yeah. But don't you think we sort of need to get them to smarten up a little bit?
Well, I think that the world is changing, especially since the last few years. Like, we've got more into, like, let's buy second-hand clothes. You know, obviously, there's an issue around that. And I don't know, I think there's individual. I think it's really important for the young people to show their individuality, which I think is missing at the moment, because nobody seems to have any. You know, we had like the phase of the punks, the romantics, the mods. What were you?
They're a bit of a grunger.
A grunger.
Well, a lot of them are doing it with sort of gender, sexual identity.
The new goth.
Yes.
Well, look, I think that the ability to dress smartly is an important life skill for all young people. So they can be as casual as they like, but I think maybe they could have one smart day a week.
Yeah. Or
just be encouraged to scrub up a little bit. And actually, as Sajila mentioned earlier, it doesn't help when they get taken to school by mum or dad, basically in pyjamas. I mean, flip-flops to me are not acceptable footwear. Anywhere except the beach.
Ever. Exactly.
Even
on the beach. Yes. Nowhere else.
And that is about it. Well, look, if you were... Go on.
Mark wears shorts to work.
Well, I do, actually, yeah.
I mean, pot kettle black.
I know, it's true. I'm like a postman in midwinter. There I am with my pale legs. Well, if you want inspiration about how to look smart and dress when you're in a professional setting, take a look at my colleague, Michael Portillo. This is him this morning on the Political Correction. I mean, look at the colour coordination.
He's great. I mean, I've always loved his dress sense.
Yeah.
You know, forget the politics. Let's just look at the outfits of the politicians. But yeah.
Yeah, because he's on his train journey, some wonderful blazers.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I've never noticed it.
The glasses match.
Do you know who he reminds me of? Did you ever watch Sex and the City?
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Big.
Stanford Blatch.
Oh,
Stanford, yeah.
There you go.
Not Mr. Big.
Willie Garson, R.I.P. I'm sorry to... But I actually do like Michael Portillo, so that's said with all due reference.
No, fantastic guy, and really enjoyed watching him here on GB News. He did the Political Correction with Arlene this morning, and a great watch it is. Well, all of this talk of hairstyles has inspired tonight's Great British Game Show. That's right, we're going to play a game of Hair's This. That's right, it's called Hair's This, in which you at home and my panel here tonight must identify the celebrity just from their famous hairdo. So let's start with celebrity number one. Who owns this Barnet? Bit of a close-up there.
Phil Spector.
No, good guess. It is a rocker, though.
Queen member. What's
Yes.
his name? I can't. The man who's married.
Lead guitarist
Brian May.
Brian May, who famously wrote "We Will Rock You" and "The Show Must Go
I would
On."
never have got that.
Phil Spector.
Fantastic talent. Definitely not Spectre. OK, our celebrity number two.
Matt Hancock.
You go, Hair's This. No hair. It's no... Hancock's got a lot more hair than that. That's why Gina loves him.
A clue. Give us a clue.
It's a celebrity that had a famous meltdown about 10 years ago. She's just got control of her life.
Oh, Britney Spears.
It is Britney Spears. Let's have the reveal. There you go. That was definitely a low point for our Britney. I'm glad she's on the road to recovery. How about this famous celebrity? Hair's This. Famous footballer. It is Beckham. That's right. Got in trouble with Alex Ferguson for that particular hairdo. I think that was the beginning of the end of their relationship and the beginning of the end of Beckham's relationship with style. How about our next celebrity? He's back on tour. Did his first show in his farewell tour.
Elton John.
It's EJ. That's right. Pretty youthful hairdo, I think we'll agree.
Yeah.
That's the one part of Elton that's ageless.
I think it's what's called a thatch.
It's a bit of a thatch, there you go. Looking good and rocking around the world. Here's our next celebrity. Hair's This.
That's Trump.
It is Donald Trump. There you go. Emily showed a bit too much knowledge there. Straight in with, I know that hairline. I've admired it for years. It is the Donald.
His hair wants to leave him.
I do miss him on Twitter.
He's fallen out with his own
his own
Barnett.
hair wants to leave him, as well as his wife, probably.
There you go. Well, let's power through another few more. How about this? Whose Barnett is this?
Queen Elizabeth, Her
It's
Royal Majesty.
our wonderful Queen. There she is. That's unmistakable on every banknote in the country. Another Queen, but this time of pop. Let's take a look at our next one.
Jerry Halliwell?
It is Jerry.
Is it?
Good knowledge. Another strawberry blonde, just like you.
Another strawberry blonde, yeah. We
Okay,
stick together.
and last but not least, a true legend, a true superstar. Who could this be? Whose Barnett is that?
Eamon Holmes.
Unmistakable.
Eamon Holmes.
And he's back tomorrow, of course, 6 till 9:30 himself and the brilliant Isabel Webster. Well, look, thanks to my amazing panel tonight and look forward to all of you returning to the show very soon. Thanks to Lorna and the team for working so hard tonight and all my amazing guests, but most importantly to you for your company. I'm delighted to say I'm in the hot seat for headliners, big laughs, big comedians, big stories after this.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking to get off to a largely dry but predominantly cloudy start with some rain affecting northern Scotland. Let's look at the detail then. The southwest of England will be shrouded in a blanket of low cloud, which will leave at least some temperatures dipping too low, so frost will be localised. A similar story as we move across to the southeast as well, where low cloud will give some mist over hilltops. 1 or 2 cloud breaks are possible across Wales, but on the whole here too, it will be quite a gloomy start to the day. Across the northwest of England, some mist or fog is possible on high ground, and the cloud here also being thick enough to give the odd spot of drizzle in places. The northeast of England standing a better chance of catching 1 or 2 clear intervals, but where the cloud is broken, we're likely to see a slight frost begin the day. Rain affecting the north and the west of Scotland, but by contrast, a dry start on the cards across southern and eastern areas, again with a touch of frost likely. Areas near the north coast of Northern Ireland will have cloud breaks, but for the rest of the province, Monday looks set to be a dry day, although rather grey. And though the remainder of Monday morning, some rain will persist in the far northwest, elsewhere it will stay mainly dry, with largely cloudy skies. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Mark Dolan. It is almost 11 o'clock and it's time for Headliners. We'll be taking a comedic romp through Monday's newspapers. But first, here are the latest headlines with Polly.
Good evening, I'm Polly Middlehurst with the GB News. Downing Street says an MP who claims she was sacked because of her Muslimness was invited to make a formal complaint but failed to do so. Nusrat Ghani lost her job as Transport Minister in 2020. The Prime Minister then spoke to her after learning of the extremely serious allegation. In a statement, the MP says Boris Johnson did write to her saying he couldn't get involved, but that she only wanted the government to take the matter seriously and investigate it properly. Here's what the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, had to say.
I believe a claim like this, as serious as this, should, but it can only happen if the person making the complaint makes it formally. That's when the procedures kick in. And just to be clear about this, that advice was given to Nuz back in 2020.
Dominic Raab. Britain has accused the Russian president of plotting to install a pro-Moscow leader as head of the government in Ukraine. In an unusual move, the Foreign Office named the former Ukrainian MP Yevhen Murayev as a potential pro-Kremlin candidate to take over in Kiev. Former head of the army, Lord Richard Dannett, told GB News the West just needs to work out what Putin's objective is.
We have to remember that scrape him to the core and you find an unreconstructed KGB colonel whose beloved Warsaw Pact and Soviet Union was destroyed by the cohesion of the West in 1989 when the Berlin Wall came down. And what he would like to achieve more than anything else is to sow discord and doubt amongst the minds of NATO members and break up that cohesion of NATO.
Lord Dannett. 1 million more disabled people are now trapped in hardship and poverty than in 2010, according to research by the Labour Party. They analysed Department for Work and Pensions figures and found 3.8 million people affected, up from 2.6 million when the Conservatives came to power. Labour Party Chair Annalise Dodd says the cost of living crisis has seen poverty explode, and she's calling on the government to cut VAT on energy bills to help those most affected. And the Royal Navy have helped seize £15 million worth of drugs in the Gulf of Oman. HMS Montrose were involved in the operation to intercept more than a tonne of heroin, methamphetamine and cannabis. The team found the narcotics on board a small vessel before testing and then destroying them on board their naval ship. Good for them. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now headliners.
You are watching Headliners. Thank you, Polly, for those headlines yourself. We're about to take a comedic romp through tomorrow's newspaper front pages with the creme de la creme of British comedic talent. But let's have a look first at the front pages. And let's start, shall we, with the Daily Mail. Entire cabinet would back a tax hike delay. The whole cabinet would back delaying the controversial national insurance hike to help families hit by the cost of living crisis, according to a leading minister. Meanwhile, The Guardian. PM pulled into row over Tory party Islamophobia and Ukraine taking Putin plot seriously. How about The Independent? Man branded Putin's stooge speaks out. Yevhen Murayev tells Kim Semgupta at The Independent that he's prepared to take legal action against the UK government, linking him with a plan by Putin to influence Ukraine. The number 10 story rolls on in relation to Partygate. Number 10 officials hold back information from inquiry. Clearly a case to answer on that one. Meanwhile, The Telegraph. Number 10 police questioned by Gray over parties. Officers' accounts of comings and goings in Downing Street form a key part of the report. Clearly, the fate of Boris Johnson lies in the hands of Gray. Sue Gray, of course, who's investigating Partygate. Photograph of the Queen as well. Queen to spend accession day at the Duke's Sandringham cottage. OK, The Metro. A fight to the death. Invasion will spark bloodbath, warns ambassador as he urges Putin to step down from a war in Ukraine. Financial Times. Unilever faces pressure on new front as US activist builds stake. Peltz targets the third biggest British company, and a test follows a failed bid for GSK Health Unit. We'll get a translation of that story later in the programme. The Daily Mirror. Scandal of cold Britain, freezing a gran of 71 whose house is too cold for her grandkids to visit. The Sun newspaper, police probe, Katie's facing 5 years. Troubled Katie Price was last night facing up to 5 years in jail over an alleged abusive text. The Express, in loving memory, the Queen's special pilgrimage to Prince Philip's beloved cottage. Fury over new road rules, which we'll be discussing later in the programme. And Boris accepts need for change at number 10. In other news, bears relieve themselves in the woods. The Times. Fears mount. Russia will weaponise gas supplies. And Johnson still believes he broke no rules. And last but not least, The Star. In a shock surprise to absolutely no one, hey Dave, I just saw a spaceship. Hick. UFOs are most likely to be spotted flying above a boozer, according to an unsurprising new study. And those are your papers. Joining me tonight for a comedic romp through tomorrow's newspaper front pages are two comedic powerhouses. From North London, he's just come from a playground where he spent most of his days chilling out, maxing, relaxing all cool, shooting some b-ball outside of school. It's Josh Howie.
You know me so well.
There you go.
Thanks, mate.
I'm old enough to recognise that reference from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
I should point out that I wasn't by myself. I was with children.
Yeah,
my own children. My own children. Let's be very clear.
That's no alibi.
Hello.
Keep digging, Josh. And next up, his knees are weak, his palms are sweaty. He's just had a lovely bowl of his mum's spaghetti. Stephen Allen! I believe that's a Bernie Taupin lyric, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I love the classics.
Brilliant stuff, chaps. Great to have you. So many stories to get through. It's going to be light and shade, as it always is on Headliners, but the storms just keep coming for the Tories. This from The Times is an unsavoury one. Steve, can you kick us off with this?
I can. I think this is the Josh story.
I think we've got a camera issue with Josh. So I think what we're going to do is
every time.
Can I tell you what's happened? The director's not a fan of Josh, right?
Who is?
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Who is?
he failed the screen test, so it's just going to be Yumi and Steve.
Too many shiny heads going on here.
That's it. No, we'll come to you shortly, Josh. But Steve, I mean, you haven't prepped this story, but your gut instincts about what it tells us.
I prep all the stories just in case.
Of course you do.
Just in case this happens. You know what I'm like. I mean, I've also been listening to things about this story all day. Fascinating. So this is a claim that someone was sacked as a minister because, and these are the words that she used, because of the Musliminess, I think is the interesting use of the English language there. It's a terrible thing, if true. Claims that that was the reason that she was moved from the post. The thing is, she didn't make an official complaint. All day, loads of ministers have been on TV saying, oh, there's not an official complaint, so what can we do? Investigate it. There is a stench of Islamophobia around the Tories, and if you don't want that to continue happening, you're going to have to do something about it. Well, if you just sit on your hands going, oh, she didn't officially complain, so why should we look into it? Because of PR. Because of bad reputation. So I think there would be an argument as to why they should step forward and actually start to look into this. Now, I know they did the Singh report, but still, these rumours keep hanging around. Do something about it, Tories.
Yeah, well, Josh, reluctantly, we're going to put you on national television. Are we set, Tony? Are we all good to go? Yes, I mean, look, Josh, what is your reaction to this story? Do you think that the Tories are institutionally Islamophobic?
I think they absolutely need to get an investigation up and running. The EHRC needs to step in, do what they did with the Labour Party, and look into this properly. I mean, if I have no doubt that she was told what she said she was told. She's a very impressive MP. She led the fight to get China reprimanded in terms of calling what they've done with the Uyghur population, and to be calling it a genocide. And I think it's very interesting because I think the far left don't really know what to do. Like they want to say that the Tory party is Islamophobic. And obviously they want to support a Muslim woman. Yet at the same time, she is like an evil Tory, and she's also someone who has very much gone against China and their steps. So I think far left very conflicted. I'm not. I think let's get an investigation. and look into this, because if she's told what she was told, I mean, it's disgusting.
I mean, Number 10 has said that she was invited to make a complaint, but she didn't at the time.
But she said that she was basically told, like, if you do that, if you go down that route, that's going to heavily impact your career. And I think this is obviously going to have a massive impact on her. She's questioned whether she wants to be an MP, which would be a massive loss. And they need to get to the bottom of this.
Indeed, couldn't agree more. Well, next up is the inevitable headliners roundup of the ongoing saga in Ukraine, Steve. Or is it all over and Putin said, I'm sorry?
No, but I have some good news. This is in The Guardian. I think we had to go to The Guardian because it has positive things to say about the EU. So you can find it also covered in The Telegraph just after the cartoons. The EU an EU official has vowed rapid sanctions if Russia launches Ukraine military attack. So at least there's some threats coming in. This is what we need. So just to get us up to speed, Russia amasses some forces near the Ukrainian border. We sent the Ukraine some anti-tank stuff, I seem to remember. Biden fumbled some words, making it seem like an invasion was OK as long as it was just the tip of the country. But at least...
Always go for the tip.
At least it's now to... it's nice
5 kids.
The EU... actually come through on some of this stuff, saying that they would respond within a few days.
It is positive, and it's reassuring to hear the EU being more robust, really, than the leader of the free world, Joe Biden.
Yeah, definitely. Now, there is still the issue of how much follow-through would you get from Germany on this. They've previously said things like, we have to consider the consequences that sanctions will have for us, which... I mean, unless Germany's bought in a lot of paraffin heaters, I can see how they are going to be worried about this. But also when it comes to stopping big countries invading neighbouring countries, they owe us one.
Germany, of course, are reliant on Russian gas, which compromises their position. And it seems like they're willing to agree to this Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which allows Russia to supply gas straight into Western Europe and beyond. But it also allows Russia to switch off all energy supplies to Ukraine, which could destroy the country. So it's possible that Putin can win in Ukraine without invading.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, I also think if an invasion happens, no one likes the idea of trying to calculate your odds. You know, it's all very well sending over some tech to Ukraine, but up against Russia, what's it actually going to do? It's got to come down to the economic sanctions, which kind of eventually has to come down to sourcing energy somewhere else. You can't leave yourself that vulnerable. And then this claim about NATO, the agreement that would sort it is making sure that there's an agreement that Ukraine never joins NATO. Well, you can't have control over another sovereign country's decisions without also being a different kind of villain.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, how do you see this playing out, Josh?
Whether he is bluffing or not, I mean, it's who knows? I think that they're going to back down. Or I mean, if you've got the German foreign ministers already expressing doubts about whether they would go through with some of the more impactful decisions about massive consequences. They're saying massive consequences. That's what, but it's not going to be a massive consequence. The big one would be the taking Russia out of the SWIFT banking system. That would have a big consequence. But if Germany's already sort of pulling doubts into that, I just don't see them going through with it. They need that gas, and especially at the time when gas prices are going as crazy as they are. I don't know. It's I'm not very optimistic about it, unfortunately.
Putin off the hook once again. Now, Monday's Telegraph are reporting that Nicola Sturgeon is starting the process for a second independence referendum. Tell me more, chaps.
Well, I just watched Braveheart, so I'm fully up on everything.
It's a documentary about Scotland.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know all the historical facts. I know where everything comes from now. This is just sort of seemingly history repeating itself, because this isn't the first time that Nicola Sturgeon has threatened to do another referendum. I think this was sort of pointed out to her in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. She said exactly the same thing, that she would start taking moves towards doing another referendum, and then nothing happened. Of course, we've had COVID the last 2 years, but even before then, whether this is the time that they're going to finally have their second once-in-a-generation referendum, I don't know. I mean, in a way, the more that she delays it, the less likely it's going to happen in terms of, their S&P have not been great. as in government.
They've got a case to answer in terms of their health service, drug addiction, drug deaths, of course, the economy, and even COVID policy.
Well, absolutely. They can only blame the UK and England for so long, and Boris and all the other stuff. When they have actual control of their NHS, of the money that they spend, and you can see that they're not getting good results.
Literacy is another problem, yeah.
Yeah, so...
and that's just Nicola Sturgeon. But, I mean, do you think that she's a sort of Trumpian figure, and actually her threat of an independence referendum is her leverage? That's actually her currency, just as Trump keeps threatening that he's going to make a run for the White House. Is it all saber-rattling?
I think she desperately wants it. I think she's committed to that ideology. And in some ways, it makes sense that this is the time for her to do it, because even though she's under a lot of criticism with COVID, at the same time, she was on TV, wasn't she doing speeches every night? And she was sort of setting herself up as the matriarch of the nation.
Yeah.
And so...
COVID has been a war of sorts, hasn't it? And it has allowed some people like Jacinda Ardern and Nicola Sturgeon to look very presidential.
Yes, and they've utilised that exactly for that purpose.
Whereas Boris has gone the other way and looked rather secretarial, I think.
At least he wasn't in a fridge this time. Give him credit where it's due. He didn't do any of those press conferences from insider Zanussi.
Now is the moment to pursue independence, because the Prime Minister is in a weak, unpopular position. This is do or die for Nicola Sturgeon, isn't it?
But that supposes that the biggest argument for independence is what Westminster's doing. Surely it shouldn't be. I mean, I totally agree that the future of the Scottish people should be a matter for them.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't. You shouldn't make that kind of decision about your future based on what's happening down at number 10. It should be about the future of that actual nation when it goes independent. I'm not sure now is the time for it. I mean, just recently she was having to explain, or at least apologise for in some part, the very adverse effect on businesses that's been happening because of the strict restrictions over Christmas. If ever you've made someone's economy a bit worse, don't ask them for a vote straight after. That stings.
Yeah. Wise words indeed. Well, many more wise words to come. We'll be talking about fury around low traffic neighbourhoods, Katie Price in trouble, and how we've all got to think about a different way of working. Even those two. I'll explain what work is during the ad break. See you shortly.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've splashed the cash tonight in the direction of Steve N. Allen and Josh Howie. Money well spent, I think you'll agree. Let's have a look at Monday's Guardian. A moral question for our time. For rich people, admittedly, should tax avoidance schemes be stamped out? Steve?
Not my words, but the words of the founder of Phones for You says yes, that the tax avoidance scheme should be stamped out, and the ones he's talking about are the ones that he's used. And claims that he used them in a way to then get more money to invest in the company when it was starting out and became a success. So one reading of this could be he's trying to close that drawbridge. Like in the same way that whenever you're interviewed and people say, have you got any advice for people starting out in comedy? Don't, because I need the work and I will. Yes.
Exactly right.
But at the same time, this John Caldwell, he was on Desert Island Discs, and he says that these tax fiddles, as he called them, should be stopped. If he had the chance to do it again, he wouldn't, and he reckons that that's the way to make things fair. I have to totally agree, because it's so easy to sit around blaming people for not paying enough tax or corporations for not paying enough tax. You kind of have to accept that they're going to try and chase that particular angle. Yeah. It's the law that needs to be sorted out. Make tax fair, and then here's what I like, right? He says there's an attitude where in business it looks like you're smart if you don't pay a lot of tax. What we need to do is make tax impossible to get out of, and then people will start showing off about how much they pay. Because everyone likes showing off their status. Instead of having a big car, you'll be like, oh, I'm doing so you won't believe how much tax I paid, because people care about status for some reason. That's how we finally do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, John Caldwell is a great philanthropist as well, isn't he? And he's been very generous in relation to many, many charitable causes. I think he's got his own foundation. But it's still better if rich people just pay more tax rather than pay less tax and then be generous after that.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the point. They're taxed at source. We can't rely on their generosity of spirit.
Yeah, we shouldn't need to, because they benefit from all the things. I always think if you walk down the street without someone attacking you, you've done well out of the day, because and we've all funded it, whether it's streetlights, policing, the education that stops people being attackers in the first place. So you've got to chip in, enjoy adding to the fabric of this nation that we're all living in.
Or you could just buy some bodyguards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't afford that.
That's the other way.
Just take the heat.
Just
put your tin hat on.
Yeah, but I think it's a bit rich, no pun, but like him sort of going, oh yeah, he's just pulling up the ladder to other billionaires coming up behind him. It's like, it's all well and good for him to go, oh yeah, I think that's wrong, but I've sold my company for 1.5 billion pounds or whatever, and that's really out of order. It's like, yeah, you can sort of say that when you're at that sort of that perch above. It's like I don't know. I'm trying to sort of think of it's like saying that polygamy is wrong when you're like 80 and you've already had your 5 wives.
You've done a Hugh Hefner.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, that's what it is. It's Hugh Hefner turning around going, you know what, monogamy is the way to go. Yeah. It's like, it's good enough for you to say that now, mate, in your 90s or whatever, when the Viagra is no longer working.
That's right.
No
going to parties in a dressing gown anymore. No sailor's hat, no pipe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I just am concerned that in the end, tax is never completely enforceable, especially for these billionaires who have clever accountants. Because the point that John's made in that interview is he didn't break the law, he just used clever schemes with which to pay less tax. Yeah. And that's always going to be a problem, especially in our globalised economy.
I mean, he could do what I do, which I pay very little tax by earning very little money.
That's very clever.
That's the other way. That's the other part of the equation.
You're up there with
that's my
Jimmy
tax.
Carr.
Yeah, that's my tax avoidance scheme. Is to just be very unsuccessful. So there's just something that people might want to think about. Another way of doing it.
It's definitely an option. I'm sure the HMRC thanks you for that. Now, next up, in The Guardian. A scandal reminiscent of the bad old days of the 80s, a contaminated blood scandal, Josh. This is a horror story, isn't it?
It's really disturbing, but yeah. This college, it's called Treelaw College. It's a boarding school in Hampshire that specialises in teaching haemophiliacs. And they were carrying out these experiments, these medical experiments on these kids. These doctors came in to trial out some new process, and in turn, about 100 of them got HIV positive and what was the other thing that hepatitis as well, which has also had a terrible impact on their body, as one of the people says, if not worse. And now they're suing the college because it was sort of done without the parents' permission.
Yeah.
And you just think of all the people's lives who were destroyed, because the first person, the head of the former people who's leading this claimant is. He found out when he was like 18. They said, "Oh, by the way, you've got your HIV positive." He thought his best friend died a couple of years later. He thought, he grew up just thinking from that point, at 18, that he was going to die. And he nearly did. And then they came out with all the treatments, and now he is alive, which is obviously great. But at the same time, he's lived his life. How are you meant to have a relationship? How are you meant to sort of live and put work in for the supposed tomorrow that never comes?
Yeah.
It's a really horrible story. I hope they get as much money as possible, and hopefully learn whatever lessons need to be learned.
Absolutely right. Well said. I echo those sentiments. Now, another Conservative bullying story to add to this week's pile. Steve, what's going on?
Yeah, the latest update on Blackmailgate. So this we heard previously on Blackmailgate.
He's using the voice.
Has this replaced Partygate, by the way?
It seems to be.
Is it the latest gate?
Is this the dead cat, or is this a secondary thing that they need to put under a cat? It's difficult to know. So we'd heard that there were threats, blackmail to get people to support Boris Johnson. In that kind of like, oh, it's a very nice constituency you got there. It would be a shame if anything was to happen to it. Gavin Williamson's now been accused of a threat to cancel a new school that was in the area, in the constituency of the Tory defector Christian Wakeford, if he didn't vote against those free school meals in holidays. Remember when that was a thing? And this is the problem with Gavin Williamson. Never have a phase where you're known for having a tarantula on your desk.
Correct.
Because it's really difficult then to backpedal and go, me, evil? I'm not evil. Am I Kronos, the spider? So, I mean, even Blofeld's sitting there going, at least the cat's cute. Come on, man.
Yeah. He's thinking that tarantula, that's a bit on the nose, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Not too subtle
You
at all.
protest too much.
So, he was...
I also think the scar just down his cheek is a little bit... It's OTT, isn't it?
Yeah, unnecessary. It makes it difficult. If you're chief whip, I can see why he wanted to look all mean. But then he is education secretary, still doing mean things according to the accusation.
Can I offer some defence, though, to the whips? Because, I mean, it was ever thus. That's what whips do.
Do you know, I've actually written that down as a point, because going through some of what happened, the accusation is that Wakeford was taken to one side and said, oh, it's a bit strange that you're going against the department that would be funding this thing. Oh, you want to look out for yourself.
Which is a great way of wording it. It was just like this sort of very... But
it's in saying it out loud that then...
We'd hate you to lose that local library.
Yeah.
What a shame it would be.
Then, when reading it, typing out again, it's made me think, no, it is wrong. I know what you mean. You always presumed it goes off, but when you say it out loud, you think, actually, it's a hideous thing to do. You're threatening the future of the children to try and get your way.
That's right. And it doesn't feel very democratic, does it?
No.
It's autocratic.
Yeah. And it's all to do with, who knows, there's the networks, there'd be issues of manipulation within there. No, it's all wrong.
Do you think there will be any implications for the government about all of this? Or do you think the damage is done?
Well, the damage is certainly done, but I think it's the larger system which people maybe have to start looking at. Because when you watch TV programs like The Thick of It and Yes Minister and and even like House of Cards, which was great, it's like that's what they do, and that seems how politics works. And I wonder if part of this story, the reason why it's got the publicity, is because it was a school. So the fact there was a school and it was something that obviously is needed, and that's where our money should be going, the tax money, not that I pay any much, because I'm, but
that's all changed now you're on telly, by the way.
Well, let's see what next year's tax is.
You'll have to have a word with Gary Barlow next year.
I call Jimmy.
Mate, have you got ideas? Just text John Cordwell. He's got a very good mobile phone.
He's got free text.
But yeah,
of course he has, yeah.
But if it was a car park, I don't think we'd be having this conversation. If he was like, oh, you better watch out, you're not going to get that beautiful new car park, then I don't think people would be bothered. It's a school, it's a hospital. These things are wrong things to threaten.
Playing politics with people's lives. Well, let's have a look now at Monday's Metro, and this is a delicate subject, Josh.
Yes, this...
And therefore you're the wrong man to talk about it.
Why have they given me this one?
I mean...
Haven't you learned anything over the last few months?
Famous last words. Sensitive story, Josh Howard.
Josh Howard. Let's talk about pornography, Josh. Again, I'm trying not to take it as an insult that I was given this... I think
you can be flattered.
Yes, they're like...
Right, what you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they assume. So it's an interesting story. It's something that we've sort of known about, but because they were trying to put through legislation about making it that you had to prove you were 18 before you could watch porn, and that didn't go through, which I think is a mistake. But the details of the BBFC, British Board of Film Classification, of that report has come through, and this is what this article is about. It's a very long article. It's a very depressing article, and weirdly, it's slightly voyeuristic because it's a lot of stories about people talking about the impact that porn's had on their lives, whether the man or the woman. And the man and the man and the woman and the, anyway. So it's got some really quite disturbing stories here, but there is no doubt that watching porn at an early age and having access to the world of pornography is having a detrimental impact on young people.
Yeah.
I've got a 12-year-old boy. I don't think he's going through puberty yet. I haven't checked recently, but...
You're just going on your own biology, right?
I developed very, very late. And then
26?
26, and then I lost the hair in about a month.
But what a month it was, though.
Yeah, it was a good month. That's when I met my wife, actually. It was like literally I had that month and I met her, and then it all went wrong, but she was locked in.
You're right.
So,
literally, I've heard, but there you go. That kind of thing's not allowed anymore.
What do you do? How do you teach your children?
Yes.
Because it is a protection issue, because it will, I'm aware, it's going to warp his brain. I did talk to him about it, like about a year or two ago. I did just sit him down and said, because he'd been around a friend's house, that he hasn't been to since,
but you've been a few times.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, what site was that? And they'd been on an iPad, and he sort of described something weird came up, and there were these people, and they were so I had to sort of explain, and even at that point I was trying to be really matter of fact and say, look, the stuff that you're going to see and have access to is not, I just want you to know now, that isn't reality, and you have to just be aware of that from the get-go. This is what I was thinking as I was reading this article. I think I might have solved the problem. Bring back porno mags.
Yeah, that's a brilliant idea.
And that's the way we should
educate. Do we have to get the originals, or are they? I mean, are they in a fit state for reuse?
Well, I don't know. Let's take the photos. Let's do a before and after of the women now and see how they are.
It's worth maybe reaching out to sort of older relatives, a few uncles, saying, Uncle Jim, have you got any copies of Razzle?
Yeah. You can control that much better than controlling
Uncle
the
Jim's like, they're heavier and thicker than they were, but knock yourself
Here
out.
you go.
Yes.
Fortunately, my grandma threw away my porn a few years ago. I'd left it there. Anyway, that's a long story.
Can I tell you something?
I was hiding it there.
That's her story.
Oh, no.
She threw it away. I mean, it's very important we have this conversation, Steve, isn't it? Because, I mean, I don't want to sound pious about it, because pornography is there, and, of course, it's an ancient art form, you could argue. But the kind of modern pornography...
Is that what you argue?
That's what I argue.
I'm looking at art.
From that museum.
Yeah. That's what I told my mother in 1983. Yeah. She wasn't having any of it. But... The issue is that modern pornography, it's a bit like drugs, a bit like marijuana. The marijuana of today, is not the same as it was in the 60s at Woodstock. And I think it's the same with pornography, because, it's very manipulative. A lot of it is, I think, borderline violent. And I think it's
the stuff that Steve watches, yes.
Well, yeah, too right. I mean, I just think some of it looks quite abusive to me, and I really worry about kids getting their sex education through those sorts of videos.
Yes, there's 2 points, really good points you've made there. One is that some of it is so violent. Some of it was described in the article. If you can't really tell the difference between that description of porn and how you describe an MMA clip, then you're watching the wrong stuff. But also, this shouldn't be your education. It is like trying to do GCSE physics by watching Star Trek. There's a difference between entertainment and actually getting useful information. I'd also like to add in there, one of them did say that she had a strictly religious family, and the only sex education she had to that point was being told don't do it. Yeah, I have to add in that kind of closing down the discussion by religion stops the healthy discussion being had.
Yes, that's right. And we do have to get real that porn is out there. The genie is out of the lamp.
2 clicks away, or 1 if you set up a little shortcut.
Look how easy it is.
Show me that during the break.
Sorry, I didn't realise it was 1 click away. I got a bit excited.
Can I just say that was an unusually clumsy wrist action from you, Josh?
It's the wrong hand.
Yes. He's out of his comfort zone. Listen, I think we all need a break. I'll see you in 2 after the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners, a comedic romp through tomorrow's papers, in the company of Josh Howie and Steve N. Allen. Now, hernias and hermaphrodites. Tell me more, Josh. It's more than just alliteration, isn't it?
Yeah, this is... so this 67-year-old went in to hospital because he had a growth, and he thought it was a hernia, and he'd been born with like one descended testicle. Anyway, they examined it, cut into it, and inside was a uterus, cervix, fallopian tube, and ovary, and his missing testicle.
It's remarkable.
Yeah. So this is 200 cases of this. It's a very rare syndrome. It's called persistent Mullerian duct syndrome, PDMS, not to be confused with PMS, which is actually also why he suffered from that. And what I liked about it was that, well, it's a pretty crazy story, but he was 6-7 years, but he went in, he said he'd had swelling in his groin that had lasted for a decade. Now that is... that is such a masculine thing of like...
Correct, to ignore.
Yeah, literally 10 years. He's like, you've had this massive growth for 10 years, and then it took it, and he finally went into hospital.
Well, you know, there was a gamer, I mean, it's a sad story really, but a gamer during lockdown who was so addicted to the games he was playing and so isolated that he didn't poo for about a week. And he was rushed to hospital.
Was he called Mark Dolan?
It was, yes, it was Michael Dolan, his brother. Yeah. But they had to have it surgically removed. But look, this is quite extraordinary. So this bloke's ignored a major symptom for a long, long time.
Yeah. And he's got 3 kids, by the way. So
3 kids.
So now this is what's interesting is that
how many were his? I mean, did he incubate any of them?
You know, he was like self-produced. He was basically cloning himself over and over again.
Yeah. Was he indulging in? I mean, no. Let's tread carefully. So go on.
So this would be used as a sort of intersex condition to prove that sex is a spectrum. Yeah. When actually, more wrongly so, because it proves very much that it isn't, that it is binary, because he is a man. Like he had the X chromosome. It all comes because we all have these wombs and stuff, everybody, but they dissolve when the X chromosome sort of takes hold when we're sort of fetuses. Right. But this didn't, and that's why it stayed there within him. So he wasn't, he is a man. He's a biological man, but this thing happened that this stuff didn't disappear from his body like it does with everybody else.
I see. To jump in, but how does that prove it's a binary situation?
Because he's still got an X chromosome.
If the phrase that the way it trended was something about only women have cervixes.
Well, the point is that there's apart from
Does this case prove that sentence wrong?
No, only that because when it was dealing with, you're right in that, but that was proven that when they were trying to say that like people with services, there was like this is the one case that proves the exception, the proof. But it was still he should have got his cervix.
Yeah, and
checked.
Keir Starmer is now desperately trying to FaceTime him. Just saying thank
just
you.
to find well done.
You saved my bacon.
Yeah.
And good luck to this guy. I'm told he's been booked into the next series of RuPaul's Drag Race, so there could be a career advantage. Yeah. I think it's a very unique story, clearly. Has this guy spoken out about the gender side of it? I mean, is he quoted as saying anything?
Yeah, Al.
Al would do it. I mean, I'm curious. I'm curious if he identifies as a man. I assume he does.
Well, he's got 3 kids. Yeah. And 1 testicle, now 2. So, if anything, this has been a great day for him.
Yeah. By the way, before we get to the end of the show, I must count your testicles because it's.
Why wait till the end of the show?
True. Ratings.
Okay.
Well, look.
Keep them on.
Lots more to get through. This show's got balls, hasn't it? Next up, in Monday's FT, lawyers are making it easier to get divorced. Good news for my mother-in-law, Steve.
Nice. I don't know why the FT's, their analysis is not too numbers-based, which is normally what they do. But yeah, lawyers are preparing for the biggest shake-up to divorce law for 50 years, because now you can have a divorce without there needing to be fault, which is just so much better. Because within a relationship, everyone can find fault. I mean, so many faults. In the old days, you had to live apart for 2 years, or there had to be adultery. I mean, you can search online, I'm available. Then there was, what was the unreasonable behaviour, which in every marriage, everyone can find some, whether it be leaving the cup next to the sink in case it needs to be used again for another drink, and therefore not dirtying another one is apparently abhorrent behaviour. But now, you can just go, no. And it makes so much more sense. If you are 2 people who think, I don't want to be married anymore, let's tap out. Why have to pretend that one person's at fault? Because then that has ramifications later on about, he starts being brought up in court cases when things get harsh. Yeah. I'm all for it. Walk away.
But do you think that it should be easier to end marriages, but then really easy to restart them again? A bit like gym membership.
Oh, do you just take a couple of months off?
When you leave Virgin Active, they go, look, it's au revoir, not goodbye.
Yeah, I'm divorced, but she does email me every month.
And what they say is, obviously, we'll put your card to one side in case you change your mind.
If you're referring to your wife as Virgin Active, you could be doing something wrong, and that might be why
this show is
you have problems.
This show's fact-based, so we've got to be careful. But I mean, it's... look, you're very happily married, of course.
Very happily.
Can I say that I think you're too happily married?
You can say that, yes. I am very happy. I'm very grateful. I have locked my wife in with 5 kids. She cannot leave me. We're addicted to the tax credits.
And there's a prenup, right, which means if you split, she gets your debt. Is that right?
That's the other reason. And also, like 5 kids, there's no way she can leave me because he can't get an Uber big enough. So
well, I agree with you. I mean, I think that divorce is now... If you look at marriage, what keeps you together is not that sort of legal binding divorce, the marriage certificate, is it? We're paying for a Siemens dishwasher slowly, right? That's the ultimate
together.
Which story are we still talking about?
We've got a hire purchase agreement with John Lewis. That's what commitment looks like.
Absolutely.
But couples are bound up by these financial arrangements, aren't they? You're both names on the mortgage, that kind of thing. So whilst the legal side of it might be better, financially it'd still be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah. I so thought you were saying a couple is not bound together by the paperwork, it is love. No, you were straight to I've got to be paying this thing off for 3 years.
Basically, John Lewis white goods. That is what commitment looks like.
And a
Toyota Prius.
I don't think that this is a particularly good thing, though, because I think that... I mean, I still hope that there is the option to go for... I want to... If I get divorced, I want to be able to complain. And I don't want to just sort of go, we just don't get on. I want to stand there in front of a judge and explain all the terrible
Get it off
things
your chest.
that my wife is like, the dishwasher. You don't know what the dishwasher's like. You don't know how she stacks it. These kind of things.
Is there a dishwasher situation in your house,
mate? It's. How long do we have? How long do we have left on the show?
I'm a fan of the light load.
The light? No. Me, I've got to pack it up. I've got to get your money's worth.
Mrs. Dolan likes to overload. You would be very
I'm an overloader.
We're all knives down, though, at least.
No,
knives down, definitely.
Really? Knives up?
Health and safety, come on.
Did you know that, I'm afraid, every year a number of people impale themselves with the pointy-uppy knife in a dishwasher?
They won't need to now. They just
Thank
get
you.
no
You've
fault
just
of
saved
it.
my life.
One
Thank
lady,
you, headliners.
A very sad story. One lady actually passed away because it hit I'm afraid, a vein in her wrist.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
well, I'm going to
so
be...
reflect
Turns out
on
I was
that.
wrong. I'm not going to get divorced now.
Who
Thank
knew?
you.
Exactly.
Thanks, headliners.
There you go. Well, look, many thanks to Siemens for the sponsorship of that item. Next, a story from the Times about the highway code. Josh, please make this sexy.
Oh, yeah. So I was riding my bike.
It's working.
Yeah. And
now I know why you've got 5 kids.
Thank you.
Do you do that sort of that weird voice? Is that what?
well, I was actually doing. I call it my Stephen N. Allen voice.
That's quite good.
Hey, how you doing? You want to go for number 6?
Does your wife secretly crave Steve N. Allen? Is that the truth? Is that what's in her?
That was one.
She's like, do the Steve N. Allen.
Do the Steve. So I was getting a bit distracted there. Anyway, yes.
It's Barry White of comedy, old Allen.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he's a very, it's very impressive. And also he's got like this. By the way, that's not real.
No,
Anybody thinks that's
sewn in the pocket.
That's the true sign of class. So cycling, they've changed the highway code. And now you can cycle, and now what they're saying is in country lanes, you should cycle in the middle of the road or to the right. And also two abreast as well. There are going to be problems with that because a lot of people aren't going to know that and are just thinking that the bicycles are trying to hold them up and whatever. So that's the problem. Normally, when it's fast roads, they're saying bicycles keep to the left, as is normal. But this could be a problem for a while where until it takes time for people to learn that this is going to be the new system, I think there's going to be a bit of road rage going on.
Definitely, because I noticed that when speed limits went to 20 miles an hour in city centres. So I would do 20, which at the time felt ridiculously slow, possibly dangerously slow. And cars behind, they didn't get the memo. They're like, get out of my way. And I'd have people overtaking me in a sort of city centre high street.
Are you sure they weren't going, it's Mark Dolan?
Well, there might have been a bit of that. There is always a bit of pushback, isn't there? I've also got hybrid, which is a bit slow anyway. But I just think that you're right. The transition is probably going to be quite hazardous when we get used to these new rules.
I don't know. I mean, look, there'll be enough coverage of this, but it will all be the newspapers saying, ridiculous, the cyclists can block the roads, it's terrible. The actual rules make...
Were you just doing a Steve N. Allen voice there?
I was doing a parody of myself. Yeah. But it actually makes sense. On a quiet street, you should probably... It's good to be in the middle so that a car can spot you. All of these are just about being more seen.
But these country roads, I mean, the speed limit on them is very often 70 miles an hour.
I believe
so imagine if you get stuck behind some middle-aged man having a midlife crisis in Lycra and you're on your way to Devon. Good luck with that.
But I think the idea is even if
Devon.
they were on the left side of the road, you'd still potentially hit them. I don't think this is saying move yourself into a dangerous place. It's saying don't hide in the left. If there's lots of cars on a quiet street, don't be weaving in and out, be in the middle. And then it says, as soon as it's safe to do so, let them overtake.
And also that's a motto for Steve politically. Don't hide on the left. Stop hiding on the left, mate.
Came out as a lefty and it's changed your life, hasn't it?
Still leaning that way.
And you've got a uterus. There's a lot more to this guy than meets the eye.
It's a hybrid.
Nice callback. Well, look, let's have a look at the Times now. Working from home is now the norm for middle-class people at least, Steve.
Yeah, this is a story in the Times about WeWork, which is worrying. It seems like rent a toilet. It's not. It's a company that rents out office space, but of course it does that in a way that uses the word entrepreneur a lot and doesn't talk about office space. It's a workspace solution and other such waste of typing. It's interesting because the first time it launched didn't do particularly well. They tried to float on the stock exchange. They did this a year after losing $2 billion, so it did not go well. But now it's
this
back.
guy, he had the ability, the founder of the company, to float it, and something delayed the float by a few days. In that time, it lost half its value.
Yeah, I mean, this guy...
A Greek tragedy. On paper, he was a multi-billionaire, and it all just went up in smoke.
Well, that's the thing about this. Andy Neumann, he was the first boss. He was, I can't remember how they phrased it, a nice euphemism for a bit odd, a bit out there. He had parties all the time. He's got a lot of fire festival energy.
Maverick.
That kind of, entrepreneur who's got a nice workspace.
Steve Jobs meets Elon Musk.
Well, they're doing a TV series about him.
Yeah.
They've done for Apple TV.
And that's the lesson, isn't it? If you're going to fail so big that they make a series about you.
And this business, WeWork, what they do essentially is buy office buildings and other properties and then rent out desks to individuals.
What could go wrong? Pandemic.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing. But
I mean, it's difficult asking you guys, never done a day's work in your lives, but I mean, what do you think about the idea of office life? Is it gone forever, Josh?
I think people intrinsically like it, like being around other human beings, will want to come back to that. And there is a productivity issue where people just don't work necessarily as hard at home. And that's just the reality of it. I have had an office job. I know what it's like. And so much of what gets done is through shouting across the office to somebody, meeting, so much socialization, which element of it. People want to work at home now. I understand that there's a real issue with recruitment. A lot of people now, it's a real sort of buyer's market for, for the employees. And they're all demanding to have 1 or 2 days at home. And people are going.
Do you think that hybrid solution is workable though?
I think that it suits the employees, but in terms of productivity, I think that I'm not saying the old system was perfect, and there are some things that could be changed in terms of the sort of the 9 to 5 element of it. But there is something about being around other people and all working towards a common goal.
Well, I think there's a bit of extrovert bias in that. As an introvert, you've just described my hell, and yet you think it works better for everyone. For 16% of us who just think like, oh, people drain me of energy, I'd very much rather be at home. I've got a little office in the shed. That's the place. I'd rent one of these things rather than be near people.
Says the stand-up comedian.
Yeah, I don't
want to be around people.
Also,
20 minutes, and then I'm done.
Josh, I want to apologise. Of course, you do have an office. It's the Starbucks in Crouch End.
Yes.
When you walk in at 9 in the morning.
Yeah, and I'm there until one of the school kids get a call from them to go and pick them up because they're sick or something. That's my life. This guy, though, is funny. I do want to watch this TV series because he sounded really funny. He said on one of his big retreats, he did a big speech where he said he had a desire to rehabilitate the world's 150 million orphans. Surely rehabilitate is not the right word. I want to rehabilitate those bad orphans out there.
Also, the first place, so in 2010, the firm moved into this Manhattan Soho district in a rundown property with an S&M dungeon. Now, why do you need to rent an office that's got an S&M dungeon in it? I've got one of those at home as well. So all of this.
Yeah, but have you used the GBNews S&M dungeon? What? Oh, maybe you haven't got access to that yet. Well, anyway, it's a good time. Well, I'll see you later.
It is. It's pretty hot stuff down there, let me tell you. There's a gallery of ex-Labour leaders and everything. Ooh. Now, how about this, Josh? And it's quite a story. Yeah. Monday's Guardian, technology keeps breaking on us. Maybe we should start fixing it.
This is a crazy idea. What are they thinking? Well, we have culturally moved into a place, I think, where it's just economic as well, like cheaper and easier to just replace stuff now. I remember my grandma would always have the insurance, and she had it for years about all of her stuff, and that stuff, it would last sort of 20 years. But now we kind of buy things, and if you get maybe 5 years out of a washing machine, you kind of feel like you've done pretty well. And it is normally cheaper to just buy a new one, and that's right. Whether they're trying to, I think this is a university is leading it's called the Big Repair Project, and they're trying to sort of see the feasibility of changing the culture. Of course, it's going to be better. It's better economically. It's better financially, and it's better environmentally. That's the main thing. Whether the people have the necessary skills or not is another thing altogether. Maybe back in the day you could fix a toaster, and I just don't know if people can do that. I have got no sort of technical, I was going to say masculine, it's not a masculine skill set, but I don't have that either.
I'm very surprised.
Yes.
You look like such a handyman.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I picture you lagging aloft, plastering.
I think you've been watching too much of that pornography.
I think I have. I've lost touch with reality. But it does make sense. I mean, here's a smartphone. It costs an arm and a leg. I'd like to keep this for the next 5 years, but at the moment, the way these devices work, you've got to sort of bin them after a few years, haven't you?
There's a Moore's Law issue here as well, though. I think that's the name of the one, isn't it?
The technology jumping.
So you can keep a toaster for 20 years. At the end of it, you're still making, slightly burnt toast. Whereas if you'd kept your phone for 20 years, you'd have a flip phone right now. If you could repair that all you like, but best you could hope for is like an HTC Hero with a 2-inch screen. But look, whilst everyone else has gone on those bad boys.
No trolling, no stalking.
It would still happen. You just wouldn't be aware of it.
Your mental health would be amazing. You're like, what's Facebook?
But that mode is built into these companies like economic models where Apple, they want these products to fail because they want you to buy the new one. Yeah. It's as much about like coming up with innovative new technology as they're sort of deliberately trying to make certain devices redundant, or they were, and that has been sort of proven in the past. Now people caught onto that if you upgraded the software, suddenly it became really slow. It wasn't that it wouldn't work, it's just they were deliberately making this stuff so.
Getting things fixed is really satisfying. I love to get shoes resold.
Cobblers.
Stop it. That's why we pay the big bucks, folks. On to Monday's Sun. Steve, Katie Price might be going from a page 3 bird to a jailbird.
Yep, Katie Price could end up in jail, a fact that somehow we might not have known, but we all knew it. It's because she was sending some nasty messages to her ex's fiancé. Let's get this right. She allegedly texted this person called Michelle, beeping beep, piece of beep, and gutter beep. And it was harder than a Sudoku, to be fair.
It's like Wordle. It was like Wordle. It was like trying to sort of get through those.
This woman some slack, because I'm wondering whether she sent that tweet before she'd had her first cup of tea in the morning.
Oh, is that what you messaged?
Yeah, I mean that's my sort of standard language before caffeine.
I find it tricky because one of those is a silent W. So that's
oh gosh, well that is a bit tricky. I mean, look, this woman. I mean, she's in some degree of free fall at the moment. It's a tragic story, isn't it?
Yeah. But also, I think we are in a bit of a society that likes drama, that thinks shouting at someone because you're slightly miffed is the way forwards. No one seems to have the ability to rein in their emotions, especially anger. Because she originally...
That is not true!
Originally
Stephen
got in trouble for shouting bleeping bleep during a tirade at Michelle at some school gates. School gates is not a place to be that angry. What kind of an example are you setting?
There speaks a man with no kids.
Yeah, absolutely. that's my peak anger. You have parked really badly. Yeah, it's
that's exactly all that's wrong with society.
in your 4x4.
That's right. Yeah, God, I know people are not. I
don't even engage with those people. The only other possibility is if these messages have gone out after a couple of drinks. Have you guys ever? I don't think you're much of a drinker, are you, Steve?
Very true. Yeah.
But Josh, you like a beer or two. Have you ever tweeted anything in a little bit of an inebriated state?
I was tweeting last night having some arguments with some Corbynites.
There you go.
Maybe I should leave this hornet's nest alone.
Don't drink and tweet.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there you go. There's wise words, isn't it? But look, here's another story from Monday's Express. An apocalyptic event in the North Sea. How have we stirred things here, Steve?
Yeah, bad news for British farmers. And as you say, it was in the Express, so they probably worked really hard to blame France. But some shellfish are dying, and no one knows why. Dead shellfish, my favourite bit of the story, and one should not really have a favourite bit of a dead shellfish story. But this bloke called Barry Dees, spokesperson for the National Federation of Fishermen's Organisation, described the situation as an Agatha Christie murder mystery.
Right,
so we have prawns, a drawing room with the River Tees being dredged, the algae bloom and probably some industrial waste. I suppose you wonder why I called you all in here. One of you is the murderer. I don't think that's how they're playing out. They don't know why these shellfish are dying. At the moment, it is
pretty sad. Yeah, we've had a problem with the bee population. Now, shellfish, of course, as a Jewish man, you couldn't care less.
No, I'm like, just kill them all.
Sweet justice.
No, I like them alive.
In fact, have you been seen in that area?
I like alive shellfish. That's the point. We love shellfish. Yes. We don't want to kill them.
You want to keep them as a pet?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we don't want to see people eating them. That's disgusting.
Have we got time for this one? Daily Star, Danny Dyer.
Yes, this is a huge story from the Daily Star. They have come through yet again. Someone blocked him in when he was shopping.
Oh no!
Yeah, he was in his posh Bentley, as they say, and he was waiting for 10 minutes until this person came out. And what I liked about this story was that an onlooker said it was really annoying. They didn't need to park so close. So I like the fact that this onlooker was just really frustrated and angry on Danny Dyer's behalf.
I think we've got the picture. Let's have a look. Absolutely furious. In his posh Bentley, as opposed to a really chavvy Bentley.
Yeah, that's good. He needs a wash. Look at all that. He needs to sort out the back. Is he just?
That's just Danny Dyer. What about the car? Look at those jeans. That's a crime against fashion, isn't it? No man over 40 should wear skinny jeans. Says Mark Dolan. Wearing skinny jeans. Chaps, fantastic. It's been brilliant to go through the papers today, and we look forward to reuniting very, very soon.
Lots more to come here on GB News, don't forget. Eamon and Isabel are back for breakfast at 6 a.m. Don't forget the national anthem at 5:59. It's been such a busy few days. I want to thank you for your company, your texts, your tweets, and we'll do it all again next Friday. Headliners, of course, back tomorrow at 11. See you soon.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
M&M's try to make their branding more inclusive. Poet Kate Clanchy is targeted by social justice activists, and a scandal is brewing in the Girl Guides, and most of the media are ignoring it. This is Free Speech Nation. Thank you very much. So, it's been another busy week for the culture warriors. They never rest, do they? They have the stamina, tenacity and moralistic fervour of a kind of reincarnated cyborg version of Mary Whitehouse. And they've reached the highest echelons of power now. So, the government of British Columbia have put out a tweet encouraging pregnant people to get their booster shot. Pregnant people. Now, surely the most commonly used word is women. But, of course, that might be offensive to all those pregnant men out there, and seahorses, of course. Just to be sure, the government of British Columbia specified that applicants could self-identify as pregnant. So, apparently, we can now just imagine that we're pregnant, and everyone else has to go along with it. It reminds me a bit of this article. You might remember this one. My 15-year-old transgender son is going through menopause, and I'm so proud of him. This is what progress looks like. I'm just not convinced that we should be treating people's private fantasies as though they are real life. I was saying this to my imaginary wife the other day. And she agreed. Like, she always agrees with me. That's the advantage of having imaginary wives. They're very good for the ego. Of course, this tweet from the government of British Columbia is just the latest of a never-ending onslaught against the word woman. And this week, the New York Times started using the word menstruators in its copy. Isn't menstruators exactly the kind of euphemism someone would use if they really hated women? And then, of course, you've got Planned Parenthood. This is an American provider of reproductive health care. They put out this article saying that folks with a vulva are far more than reproductive machines. Really? Then why are you calling them folks with a vulva? Why not just go the whole hog and start calling women bipedal gestation units? Maybe they meant to write folks with a Volvo. you know, which doesn't make sense either, but at least it doesn't reduce women to their bodily organs. And in other news, M&Ms have updated their chocolate characters to make them more inclusive. Now, I've always said that the struggle for equal representation among anthropomorphic chocolate treats is the last great civil rights issue of our time. I think if Martin Luther King were alive today, this would be the main focus. Most of the problems seem to be with the green M&M, apparently, who wears high heels and tends to pout coquettishly. And now she's going to be wearing trainers, which sets a much better example for young girls. You know, just think of all those kids who have eaten M&Ms over the years and have emulated the whorish behaviour of that green chocolate minx. So on to another story now. So a few months ago, on this very show, I reported on a campaign that social justice activists were undertaking against a chip shop. That's right, a chip shop. Believe me, there is nothing these people can't be offended about. And the reason they were offended is because when Recep Turhan opened his first chip shop in Whitechapel, he decided to name it after a local celebrity. He called it Jack the Chipper, right? Now, the social justice activists didn't seem to mind this, to be honest, but when he opened another outlet in Greenwich, then they were furious, because Greenwich is middle class, so that's their territory, you see. And as I said at the time, I don't think Turhan was attempting to glorify a Victorian serial killer. This all happened ages ago. I mean, it's not like he called it Harold Chipman, which would have been, you know, distasteful. Anyway, so this notorious chip shop is back in the news this week after Turhan won a court case after being fired from his last job for exposing himself in order to ward off a customer who was complaining about his parking. So it turns out, according to the law, flashing is a legitimate rebuttal to customer complaints. This should make those disputes at the returns desk at Marks & Spencer quite interesting. So we've got the poet Kate Clancy. Now, she's parted company with her publisher Picador after there were complaints about her Orwell Prize-winning memoir, Some Kids I Taught and What They Taught Me. Although it was critically acclaimed, the book was attacked by 3 activists, online, just 3, who said it was problematic because of the various descriptions of ethnic minority pupils. And what did the pupils themselves think of this? Well, they defended Kate Clancy. At least 20 of them wrote an open letter to the bookseller praising Clancy's, quote, unequivocal care and support for us as poets and people, pushing back against the suggestion that they were in any way victims. Didn't matter. Picador ignored them, didn't defend Clancy, and said they were going to issue an edited, let's call it censored, version of the book that wouldn't cause such grotesque offence, even though the people it was apparently offending weren't offended. Again, you see, online activists are getting offended on other people's behalf. And in this case, it took just 3 of them to get a book cancelled and a working relationship destroyed. Now, let me just show you an example of the kind of thing that these activists get upset about. So here's one of the trio who complained about Kate Clancy. This is her tweeting last year about how the concept of debate is itself oppressive. This is what she says. She says, I get regular invites to debate on various platforms. I always say no. Debate is an imperialist, capitalist, white supremacist, cis, heteropatriarchal technique that transforms a potential exchange of knowledge into a tool of exclusion and oppression. She clearly has a point. You know, if you open your ideas up to scrutiny and allow your views to be challenged, they might be exposed as shallow and incoherent. And then you might have to stop orchestrating smear campaigns against people who've done absolutely nothing wrong. You might have to stop piling on to people on Twitter whenever they express any kind of disagreement. You might have to stop trying to get people sacked and trashing people's reputations in the name of compassion and progress. And that would never do. Now, my panel tonight, we've got Leo Kearse and Francis Foster. They're with me till 9 p.m. on Free Speech Nation, live on GBNews and on TV and digital radio. Please welcome my guests, Leo and Francis. What the people at home don't know is that Francis was late and had to creep in during my monologue, which completely distracted me and completely messed up my timing. But don't you worry about it.
Well, that's because I think time is a heteronormative...
It is. Exactly. And you're a comedian. You used to just rocking up whenever you fancy it, aren't you? Anyway, thank you for coming anyway. You're a bit high on that chair, by the way. It's making me feel quite intimidated. These chairs are adjustable, so do you want to make yourself a bit... I'll do it on a minute.
There we go.
Much better. Much better. Now he looks like a hobbit. That's what I like. That's what I like to see. It's great to have an audience back with us again. We haven't had an audience for a while. Welcome, welcome. I do want to... How are you, Leo, by the way? I don't need to ignore you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great, glad we got that covered. It was just a pleasant try. I know exactly how he is. Always bitter. Now, let's get straight to some questions from the audience. So the first question we've got is from Kester. Where is Kester? Hi, Kester.
Hi, guys. How's it going?
Good, thank
you. My first question is, why is there a new trend of cancelling authors?
Why is there a new trend? So this goes back to what I was saying in my monologue at the start about Kate Clanchet, about the publishing company Picador, which is part of Pan Macmillan, and this is, as I said before, 3 activists, right? 3 activists. That's all it took. You see, I don't mind these people online, whinging about people. They do it about me all the time, right? I don't mind it. What I mind is people capitulating to it. That's what I mind. Like, this is a really decent woman, by all accounts, a poet who's done incredible work for poets, ethnic minority people. Anyway, look, it just makes me mad because then just 3 people ruined everything. What do you think about this, Ron?
Guy, you said 3 people ruined everything, then you looked straight at me, so thanks for that. Nice, I'm never going to get booked on this show again.
Well, you said it. It's a good segue.
But I'll be honest, to me, the problem with publishing is that it's a very white, very upper middle class, very posh industry. Yeah. And as a result of that, these people are ridden with white guilt. They realise they're incredibly privileged, so they're going to do everything they can in order to redress the balance and be on the right side of history, as they would like to say. And as a result of that, they're going to overcorrect massively and make demented decisions, which is what they're doing now.
So that is an interesting point. This is really weird to me. This stuff always comes from middle-class people. This always comes from privileged people, predominantly white, but people who aren't marginalised in any way, are taking offence on other people's behalf, being really patronising, basically, to ethnic minority people. Why is that? So why is it always posh people? What's that all about?
Because they realise they're genuinely privileged, and as a result, they're ridden with guilt, and they're always trying to redress that balance to show that, they're very socially aware, they're very socially conscious.
But they're the oppressors.
Yeah, they are the actual oppressors. They're like, we're really going to look after ethnic minorities, and you'll say to them, do you have any friends that are ethnic minorities? They'll say, it's not the point, but we're just here because I want to look after them.
I love that. A lot of these people sort of live in these predominantly white areas, and they, it's such a hypocrisy. Or am I wrong, Leo?
No, I think it is mostly white people getting offended on behalf of ethnic minorities. And if you look at this particular case, so 3 people complained that some of the descriptions, one of the students was described as having almond-shaped eyes, another one was described as having brown skin or chocolate-coloured skin, and the student said, yeah, I've got almond-shaped eyes. That is just, that's how race works. That's how different races, we've got different physical characteristics.
It's also about the intention, isn't it? It's also about, like, if you read the book, it's absolutely clear, given the critical acclaim it had as well. It's clearly not a racist trait. It's not Mein Kampf, is it? Like, it's not. It doesn't come from a bad place.
Yeah.
Like, she obviously cares about these people. This isn't. And I would have.
Yeah, it serves her right for caring. Honestly, these people who try and portray positive representations, why are you bothering? Like, I mean, why would anybody try and do something nice in 2022 when it's just going to get torn down?
You see, you always have this Schadenfreude, don't you? Whenever there's a progressive person who gets taken down, you quite like it, don't you?
Yeah. No, it's great. And also, it's because publishers capitulate. Nobody's going after UFC fighters and saying, you said something bad, or Tyson Fury. Fury says stuff that's bad all the time, but like he's just like, yes, so what? You know what I mean? I'm really good at boxing.
But he doesn't care.
He doesn't care, and people need to stop caring about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Tyson Fury said a few terrible things. I mean, didn't he say that homosexuality was going to bring about the end of the world? Which I hope it does. Because that will mean I'll have actually achieved something. I don't mind that at all. We've got a question now from Colin. Where is Colin? Hi, Colin.
Hi. Are the removal of controversial statues a symbol of progress?
So this week, we've had this removal of the statue of Theodore Roosevelt this week. That was on the steps of the American Museum of Natural History. It's been there since 1940 in New York. And now, so there's this footage. I don't know if we've got the footage. If we haven't, then please feel free to play it while I'm talking. But it was removed in the night. A big crane sort of came. Oh, there it is. So it was all covered up. It was all shrouded. They came in the middle of the night and they took the evil statue away. And like I say, it's been there for an awful long time. And the reason people were upset, so it shows Roosevelt on horseback. He's flanked by images of a Native American and an African standing beside him on foot. And that's it, really. Leo, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, the removal of statues. We're seeing it in Hong Kong as well. So the statue of the victims of the Tiananmen Square massacre, that was removed a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
So,
yeah, but did they have the wrong opinions, Leo? Do you know what I mean?
Well, they apparently did, according to the Chinese Communist government. So they're very, very concerned that these people who wanted democracy and human rights definitely had the wrong opinions.
See, that's it. I'd always trust figures of authority to decide what I should and shouldn't say.
Yeah,
I think, you know, if you don't want to be censored, don't say the wrong things. It's really easy, isn't it? It's really great. And I want big tech. I want more censor. Anyway, we're getting onto different issues there. Let's go back to the statue here. I always end up ranting about that, but the statue issue is really interesting because I think I'm going to be talking later to Femi Nylander and Emma Webb about this very issue, of, you know, how we deal with problematic figures from history, from the past, and specifically about Captain Cook this time. But it's very interesting that there are lots of people who are being... Even statues of Abraham Lincoln. I mean, there were statues of Abraham Lincoln attacked in America. Now, he had something to do, I believe, with the abolition of slavery. Maybe. I don't know. I read that somewhere. I think there was partly that, which apparently doesn't give him a free pass. What do you think about this, Francis? Because I kind of think that with these statues, often I perceive them as historical artefacts, not as necessarily celebrations. They might have been celebratory when they went up, but now they're sort of part of the historical landscape.
Well, actually, I'm actually here to defend the BBC. Did you see somebody tried to take down a statue outside Broadcasting House?
Yes.
Because it was erected by because it was sculpted by a paedophile, and the BBC said they weren't going to take it down because it represents their values. So.
Let me just clarify that Francis is in no way implying that the BBC is pro paedophilia.
Since at the moment, I'm not going to get booked again.
No, it's fine because you were joking. It's fine.
No, since 2007, they've been quite anti-paedophile. Up until then.
They're going to get me sacked. Look, listen, I will explain the story here. I'll explain the story because I can do it in a sort of Ofcom friendly way. So the story was basically Eric Gill, who's the sculptor, who made this statue from The Tempest, you know, the Shakespeare play of Ariel and Prospero. And Prospero is a big wizard-type character, and Ariel is a sprite. OK, so that's my Shakespeare PhD comes in handy sometimes, which is true, by the way, I'm not joking. Anyway, so there's this statue outside of Broadcasting House, and a guy gets a ladder, climbs it, starts hitting with a hammer. He's not doing a very good job because he doesn't have a chisel with him, so it's really ineffective. Stands up there for 4 hours while the police are just watching, thinking, oh, should we do something about this? It's really interesting. And Eric Gill was not a nice individual. Eric Gill, by his own admission in his diaries, molested his daughters, molested the family dog. This isn't a good person. The statue, however, is a rather wonderful work of art. And my argument with this is that the statue didn't actually do anything. The artist did. And destroying the statue doesn't really address the problem. I would like to see him, if he were alive today, in court, taken down for his crimes. The attacks on the work, if you do this to works of art, then we're kind of stuck because we're going to lose most great art. Well, it will go. By
that rationale, would you like to see reruns of Jim Will Fix It?
Jim Will Fix It is not art.
Right.
I'm going to stick my neck out. I'm talking about things like the statue of Perseus by Cellini in the Piazza Signoria